And we're live.
Hey everybody, how y'all doing tonight? Hope everybody's having a good Saturday. Got Mr. Hammer, Mr. David Hughes on. A lot of y'all know David. Give a shout out to everybody that's in the chat right now.
Evening, y'all. How is everybody?
Hello. Gary Spikes, Miss Sharon, Wendell. Let's see.
Mr. Mark Green's in here.
Yeah. Not so perfect, Miss Victoria. Hey, Craig. Good to see you. Miss Jean. Phyllis. Mark Creel. Foxfire.
All righty.
People starting to come in, and I know a lot of folks are probably looking at TV right now, seeing what happened up in Pennsylvania here a couple hours ago. Hey, Jeffy. Good to see you, brother. Yeah, some sad news out of a part of our country. And hey, Bobby, good to see you. And bad news. So, but hey, Miss CD, good to see you. So good to see everybody. So everybody's coming on in, and I hope we yeah. I got people. Hey, Crystal, I got people texting me all about what happened a while ago. Messages. So, hey, Hillary. So it's good to see everybody. We usually don't do, hey, Miss Michelle, CD. We usually don't do Saturday nights. I know there's a couple of other podcasts going on tonight. And then now we have this that just happened. And I know a lot of folks is going to be glued to the TVs. And if any of y'all haven't heard, somebody attempted to assassinate President Trump here a while ago. So y'all can go find all about that on the other news agencies. But tonight, hey Kimberly, tonight we got Hammer on. He is ex-law enforcement. Grew up in Washington, now lives in Texas. And during the course of his life, he has had some different experiences happen.
Trump's okay.
Yeah, Trump, they say, is okay. He's had some experiences, and he's gracious enough to come on and share with us stuff that he's seen and encountered in his lifetime.
Stop you.
Hold on.
All right, y'all. We need to keep the comments YouTube friendly. That's probably the way to put that one. Do not get our channel banned. Comments that we probably agree with, but be kind in the comments. Okay. That's it. Keep going.
All right. Anyway, so what I'm gonna do is let you go ahead and introduce yourself, Hammer, and like I said, everybody knows David. He's been on with me before. He's been on Beast TV. Here pretty soon, we're going to try to do another show. I need to talk to Miss Sherry and see if we can have that go one night and get back into biblical stuff. Yeah, so it's okay, Randall. I know a lot of folks are mad right now.
Yep. That's why I added that we probably agree with your comments. We just don't want to lose our channel. So,
all right, Will, I'll let you get started, and you started off. I mean, you can, like we talked about earlier, just go down through it, and if somebody has questions, if you can, kind of hopefully wait maybe toward the end of the show, or if you do put it up, we'll try to figure it up, and we'll try to figure up, when we can do it, and everything. So Hammer, glad to have you on. Glad to have you on, David, and y'all get started.
Thanks for having us.
Good to be here.
My name is Will, and they call me Hammer apparently because I'm a blunt instrument. when I was in law
Okay.
enforcement, I had this very tenacious attitude and was notorious for continuing to work to solve the problem all the time. And so they started calling me the Hammer because I just kept going and going and going. And it kind of stuck, and now the boys all call me Hammer, so it just worked out that way.
That's cool.
Grew up in Washington. Lived there till about 19 years ago. It sounds like a long time, but the span of things is not. I go home a couple times a year. Grew up on the Olympic Peninsula, and then we also have a place in the Cascades. And so I spent a fair amount of time in the woods. Was a Boy Scout, and then did search and rescue before I went into law enforcement. Was going in the military and blew out my knee before I could fully enlist. I was ready reserve in high school at 17. Before I could get all the way through and get enlisted, I blew my knee out, and they were gracious enough to let me out of my contract. And I was already a police cadet at that point, so I just continued down the law enforcement track. And it worked primarily rural areas, including some Indian time on Indian reservation, and had a really good career. Like I said, I spent most of my free time in the woods, either hiking or camping, hunting. Had some amazing experiences, and have seen some things that can't really explain. You know, we spend enough time, I guess, in the woods where whatever you want to call it, Bigfoot, boogers, Sasquatch, the hairy man, whatever you want to call them, you're destined to have some experiences. And in the areas we hiked and hunted as kids, we had a lot of experiences.
Before we get rolling, want to introduce our sidekick here.
Oh yeah, and this is our friend.
It's actually my cousin,
Dave's cousin Ron.
I'm sorry. I should have introduced him too. I'm sorry.
Well, he's trying to hide out in the back.
That's all right. I'm just playing the straight man tonight.
Hey, ain't nothing wrong with that. Ain't nothing wrong with that.
He's our technical guy in case anything crashes on this side too. So
Yeah, he's watching y'all's backside in case something sneaks up.
That's it.
That's right.
exactly.
But I don't.
Sisters do
But
it
I don't
here.
know what's watching for him back there. But he'll be the
We
first
are
one.
watching the reflection in the
Yeah.
window.
Yeah, in the window and on the camera. We can see him in the back behind him. So we got 360 view right now.
That's good. Well, Will, how many years were you actually in law enforcement?
Total with my cadet time, almost 23.
Okay, so you had a good time. You had a good
yeah.
many years.
And I did search and rescue. I left scouting. Well, technically I didn't, because it was Explorer Search and Rescue when I started. I did that at the same time I was a police cadet. So I was in regular scouting till I was 15, made Life Scout. All my friends had transitioned out to what they called ESAR, which is Explorer Search and Rescue. So I'm like, well, I'm the only one here now. So I wanted to be with my friends. So I went and did search and rescue.
Let me ask you something on that.
Yeah.
How often were you, I mean, because being in the mountains and having hunted there and you being there, that's pretty treacherous. How often were y'all called upon to engage?
We were
and
called
deploy? And
in the winter, probably once a month. In the summer, we could have been called up multiple times. But we also did a lot of things, like we searched. One of the searches that we did was a search for evidence from the Green River Killer. We did hands and knees searches in a field. We were literally
for the Green River Killer.
Yes, Green River Killer. Yeah, they brought
Brother.
search and rescue out because we were trained and to look for just the smallest evidence. They literally had us on our hands and knees crawling through a field looking for stuff. That was probably a 17 when we did that. My first the first search for a person that we ever did, someone who had fallen off a boat and had been in the water for a couple of days, and that was the first time I found a body on a search. Guy wasn't real pretty.
No.
It's like, kind of like seeing the movies, what the bodies look like. You being in salt water, it does strange things to a body. Fresh water doesn't necessarily do that, but salt water has a tendency to do things to the body that you don't expect. Did a lot of. I'm also a certified rescue diver, which I did while I was in high school. One of my brothers and I both got certified as divers and then rescue divers, and I still dive off and on. I think a couple times a year. I try to stay current. I know it's Texas and I should be able to dive more than that, but it just never seems to work out. We've got some beautiful areas to dive here and some great dive parks around that are, good training sites. But it just never seems to work out with that. And then a lot of my search and rescue experience was missing person related. One of the searchers I was on was one of the producers for the Cosby Show went missing, and I was on the search to locate him. And by the time we found him, he wasn't alive anymore. And that's how a lot of the searches turned out for the most part, unless we were looking for kids. And then it seemed, because we got called out for missing kids too, and it wasn't always in the woods. We did some, door-to-door searches, assisting the police department in the cities and things like that. But a good majority of it was in the woods. And again, Washington's got a lot of water, so a lot of searches around lakes and in streams and things like that.
Well, so you pretty much been in civil service most of your life then?
Correct.
Right. Okay.
Correct. Most of my family, the military, law enforcement, work for the government in some form or fashion. My dad's a retired engineer, worked for the government designing torpedoes.
Okay.
Was in the Air Force before that. I've got one brother that still works for the government. I've got one that's worked for the state of Washington. My other brother is in construction, and my sister is vice president in charge of commercial sales for a company.
Okay.
In your searches and so forth, what was, I think CD Squatcher asked a good question here, so I'm going to kind of preempt a little bit. What was the most interesting or say perplexing? And was there, I want to add something, was there any like mysterious disappearances that
All the time.
okay.
Washington
Can you speak to those?
Sure. Washington's very notorious for unexplained disappearances.
Lots of them.
Lots of them. There are hot spots. I mean,
is that due just to the wilderness around, or?
Wilderness can't explain all the people that have gone missing in Washington.
Or when you get to that, can you also talk about the hot spots, but the ones that
Sure.
are most interesting?
Sure.
Maybe perplexing, but then the hot spots, because there's, what we're
Yeah.
trending.
Oh yeah, absolutely. So Washington has very, very hot zones. The Cascades are notorious for people disappearing, literally being on the trail 1 second and gone the next, in groups of people, not people hiking solo, which happens. A lot of times when people are hiking solo, they have accidents and whatnot, but people that are experienced hikers in groups have gone, literally stepped off the trail to go to the bathroom and disappeared into nowhere. And we're deployed on searches in less than 6 hours and could find no trace of them. I mean, nothing. No backpacks, no clothes, no shoes. Wasn't predation because there would be some kind of remains, blood, whatever. None of that. It's really prevalent around Mount Rainier and Mount St. Helens in the Cascades, and really prevalent in the Southern Olympics closer to the ocean. people have a tendency to literally vanish, just gone, with literally without a trace. There's no very few times when people disappear when we're on a search were we not able to track them or find, we get dogs out there. You're almost always able to track somebody, or you find them because they hunker down. But when these people go missing that are just vanish, there's literally nothing. You find no evidence, no trace. And they're well-documented cases, except for in the national parks, because the National Park Service doesn't keep records of missing people, apparently.
Is there one specifically that sticks out in your mind more than others?
Yeah.
Or a couple?
I've got the one that sticks out in my mind the most. We had a 22 or 23, grew up in Washington, was a college student at Washington State University, had come home to his folks' house in Enumclaw. He and his friends went out hiking. Well, a seasoned hiker. I mean, seasoned, had hiked all over the West Coast. He'd done the Pacific Crest Trail. He'd climbed Mount Rainier a couple times. Had been up Mount St. Helens. Had done, I don't know how many overland treks. He'd hiked the Olympic Peninsula from one end to the other. Literally, it's a trail that goes from one end to the other. Excuse me. Had done part of the Pacific Crest Trail. He went out with his friends. They, on the second day of the hike, they were probably 15 miles into the hike, maybe. They started out lunchtime. They stopped to eat. He decided he wanted to go up and take some pictures on this lookout, on a very well-known trail, heavily used. It wasn't a professional hiker's trail, intermediate hike. Dave could make it. I mean,
Oh man.
First shot across.
But you know what I'm saying? It wasn't difficult terrain. And where he went to take the pictures was literally, he walked around a corner from where his friends were, and where he should have been to take pictures, he should have been able to see them. They probably should have been able to see him back. About 30 minutes went by. His friends didn't see him. One of his buddies went up there to look for him. Couldn't find any trace of him. Not anything. Not camera, not backpack, not anything.
And y'all traversed that area?
Oh, we had.
You did?
Oh, yeah, we had.
I'd have done it no problem. I'd have stroked it.
We had, we had Pierce, Kitsap, Snohomish. We had 4 different search and rescue units out there, including explorers and professional search and rescue, along with the sheriff's department, for 4 or 5 days, along with air support from McCord, or I guess it's Joint Base Lewis McCord now. His dad is a retired lieutenant colonel, so he had some pull. We got choppers in the air, which happens a lot in Washington. We got a lot of choppers. Never found a trace. It was the area he disappeared in. You should have. I don't know how he disappeared in.
Was this during the summer or maybe spring?
It was going into late fall, so September up there. No bad weather. That's the other thing. There was no bad weather, so we didn't get a storm or anything. Nothing hampered our search. We had air cover within, let's say, he disappeared on a Friday afternoon, and we were in searching by Saturday morning. And we had air support the whole time. They brought out not only regular canines, they brought out bloodhounds. They flew, Civil Air Patrol rolled out. So we had planes, helicopters, horse teams deployed. We never found anything. And again, he was a serious hiker. Like, he'd put a lot of time and he had all the survival stuff. He wasn't a rookie. He had everything he needed to survive because they were on a, I think the initial hike was planned for, they left on Wednesday or Thursday morning, and they were not going to come back, or they were going to get picked up on the far end of their trek on Tuesday, I think. So they were prepared. Nobody in the group wasn't an experienced hiker. Nobody in the group. The other thing is they were all members of the Mountaineers too. Every single person in the group. So they were well trained. They weren't some unseasoned guys. They know how to use map, compass, GPS. They knew their survival techniques. They knew what to do. The kid had been hiking since he was 12 or 13 years old. That one rattled me a lot because it didn't make any sense. I mean, I've been on searches where clearly people walked off and just got lost. It happens, right? Go out in the woods, go to the bathroom or whatever you're playing, because I've had it happen. I was up hunting one year outside of Mount Rainier with my best friend. We had a younger kid with us that was, I don't know, he was probably 16 maybe. And we parked the vehicle and we hiked into this area, and we knew that the park was on one side of us and that there was a river. The fog came in like a whiteout of snow. We got disoriented. And I mean, in the blink of an eye, an area we'd hunted for a long time, to the point where the kid that was with us was panicking. We had to calm him down. We sat down, calmed him down, started a fire, got him warmed up, got him some food. Then I started scouting. And once I found the river, because I had a good idea where we were, but we were really turned around. And once I found the river, I was able to take a bearing because I knew the road paralleled the river. So we were able to get back to the truck. But it's easy to get turned around. I've been in snow whiteouts 2 or 3 times where you can get disoriented very, very quickly again. And
were y'all running? Okay, somebody had point, and then you had somebody.
Yeah,
with
exactly what we did.
Back bearing.
So what we did is we set up,
and you still got disoriented.
Oh yeah, we in an area where we knew very clearly we'd hunted there before. The terrain was pretty much level, but it was also old growth timber with not heavy underbrush, but decent amount. But that fog came in and it's so disorienting. The fog came in. There was no road sounds. I couldn't hear the river. It was a perfect storm of everything that could have gone wrong. And I'd spent a lot of time in the woods. And so I know it's easy to happen. We never relied on GPS. And I'll tell you another story about a reason for that. GPS is great. Everybody should know how to use a map and compass. GPS is good. GPS has also walked many people off the side of a mountain. GPS is only accurate to within 10 feet, plus or minus.
And it's significantly impacted by the iron that's in the ground.
Exactly.
It jacks with it. Okay.
Go ahead.
That's essentially what I was going to say. And then you have to. The other thing is, I want you to speak to the importance of the point you're forebearing, then your back bearing, and then continually when you follow a map, how you have to have the right declination otherwise in those areas, because you will get twisted. And then I want you to go back to this guy, this kid, this experienced kid, and the importance of just getting your bearings and calming down.
Yeah, that's the thing. That's the other thing too, is just staying calm. I grew up in the woods. My dad taught me to use a compass and map when I was young, all the way through search and rescue and all the other stuff. I was an instructor with the Mountaineers and taught people navigation. The importance of knowing how to use your compass, and setting your magnetic declination, because your declination or the magnetic north changes throughout the world. And you have an offset between magnetic north and true north. And that changes wherever you are in the world. And if you have the wrong declination, you're liable to end up not just a little ways off, a long ways off. You could end up miles and miles off on a long trek. and I've seen it happen. You need to be. One of my biggest pieces of advice to people is, if you don't have to go in the woods by yourself, don't, because you're going to end up
Jacked because
you're going to end up
Statistic.
you're going to end up statistic. The other thing is, it takes one wrong step on a rock, break your leg. If you are going to go in the woods, you need to let people know where you're going to be, and not just close. You need to let them know where you're going to be, and give them an expectation of time. Hey, man, if you don't see me by whatever, say you're planning on getting out of the woods at 5, if you haven't heard from me, especially now with cell phones, haven't heard from me by 10 o'clock that night, there's a problem, right? There's just too many people take it for granted that they're going to be okay and don't take the time to do just the basics.
What about when you're lost and you're disoriented? Okay, do you push on, or do you
No.
do you
That's the smartest thing to do. If you get lost, disoriented, somebody in your even overly just tired or thirsty, sit down, take a break, have some water, have some food, get your wits about you, because the best tool you have out there is your mind. I've seen people experienced people get lost because they didn't do those things. They didn't take the time to get their bearings, and they pushed on, and it causes trouble. Dave, you've been there.
I've been there. Well, I mean, I kind of showed the foolishness, or exhibited the foolishness in full form on this program. That's why I asked you to talk about declination. And then the other component to this, just to follow along with what Will's saying about declination, is you have to have the right maps too, because the declination changes. I mean, at times you can't use a really old map. It's best to use the up to date ones.
With the advantage to everybody having a modern cell phone is, you go to the App Store on iPhone or Android and you download a declination app or a map app that has a declination. When I travel and I get to a new destination, I always travel with my basics. I get to a new destination, I immediately set the declination on my compass. If I know when I go home to Washington, I know inevitably I'm going to go hiking at some point, or we're going to go spend time in the woods. You got to be prepared when you step out of your vehicle or even out of your back door.
But that's coming from somebody that's got the experience, because some people they're not even aware of it. I saw where Spencer was commenting on this. He hasn't heard anyone talk about declination because they don't. I mean, if you're in the mountains, you had better keep your head screwed on straight, because otherwise it's not an if, it's a when you're going to get into a certain condition, and you've got to be prepared for it.
If anybody out there wants a good book on map and compass, there's a book called Map and Compass, written by Ken Burns. It's by Burns and Burns. His father and son wrote it. It's been updated to add GPS. It is the textbook that the mountaineers use to teach navigation. The other thing too is, and I want to say this, the crappy compass you buy at Walmart, don't buy it. You're better off to have no compass.
Lensatic.
You need an orienteering. Everybody should have an orienteering compass, unless you're well trained with lensatic compass, military style compass,
or worse.
They're not sufficient for overland use, because you then have to manually figure your declination adjustment. You have to manually figure all these other things in there. Or if you have a Silva or a Suntoe or another brand that has adjustable declination features in it, you can adjust for those things.
Before we get off on this, what I wanted you to talk about also was revisit this young man. And then you'd mentioned hounds. Was there any time that when you deployed the hounds, that there was areas that they wouldn't travel in, or were they stopped?
We didn't have any of that kind of phenomenon. The thing is, they couldn't pick up the scent. We knew where he had been. We knew where to start. From where we know he left his friends, point of separation to where he should have gone, once they were 10 feet away and around that corner, the bloodhounds couldn't find any scent. That's the other thing that's disturbing.
So y'all never found, I mean, was there any trace of this kid
Nothing,
ever
not a
found?
thing, not a backpack, not a shoelace, not an underwear, not a anything, nothing ever. And again, if there was predation, there'd be some signs, there'd be bones, there would be something, right? I mean, those are the kind of searches that always bothered me. I never, it sounds crass, but finding a dead body never really bothered me. Because at least we could,
It's closure.
it's closure for the family.
Yeah.
It's your person's not disappeared and you never find them, which happens. And I couldn't imagine somebody disappearing and never knowing what happened. You always speculate, right? Like you don't know that there's no closure. Like you said, it's not. The other searches that always bothered me the most, and a lot of people will say it's always when you're searching for kids. That really didn't bother me the most. The ones that bothered me the most when you're always searching for elderly people, because almost always it didn't end well.
Will, in any of these instances, was there evidence of like bear sign?
No
predation.
no predation. So no animal tracks, no bloods. I mean, nothing. The other thing too is that on predation, the bloodhounds would sense that open blood way easier than somebody's track. Blood has its very, very distinct smell, and anybody that hunts knows that. Human blood has a high iron content too, which is easy to track. At night, you could track blood with a black light, very easy. And we had starting. The nice thing is they had started at that point. Black lights were something that were becoming handheld, and they weren't the best technology. They were still kind of big, but we could use them.
That was before FLIR and all, and the use of FLIR.
FLIR was, the military had some thermal capability at that point. I mean, this was late 80s, early 90s. Yeah. But we had no handheld thermal, no handheld FLIR, we had none of those advances that they have today. But even today, people go missing in city parks and are never found.
Yeah.
I mean, it's
one other thing, and this is just because you got a lot of outdoors people here.
Uh-huh.
So I want you to speak to the condition you were in with this whiteout, where it was you and the other seasoned individual, but then you had somebody that panicked. Okay. And what that does to the psyche, just how that conditions the climate of the situation, and what you did to calm them down and to find your bearing about fire and all of that.
Yeah. One thing I want to answer real quick. Gary, was that Sparks?
Gary Spikes.
Just asked a question. Yeah, I think if there had been cryptid activity, the dogs still would have alerted. There wasn't that sense of panic from the dogs or that lost feeling. I don't think it, on the search for this kid,
Freeze up.
No. It's
He's
me thinking how to phrase this.
Okay. I thought you froze up for a minute.
No, it's me thinking about.
So this is a pretty significant impact on you with this kid.
Yeah. There was some strangeness. There was. I mean, the not being able to find tracks and the dog's not tracking, and no being able to find no sign is not uncommon, but it's not common either, right? Like it's not. It's a percentage, right? I'll say,
yeah,
20% maybe of the cases turn out like that.
Percentage-wise, what was your success on this, you think?
On finding people with outstanding circumstances like that?
Yeah.
0. 0.
Yeah.
When people disappear and there are things like when there are strange circumstances like that, the people are almost never found. Now, On the reverse side of that, I've also been on searches where we found clear cracks and didn't find the people till spring. I mean, in the snow and things like that, especially in the mountains.
But that stuff doesn't, I mean, it just doesn't go reported either. It
That's the
goes
thing
unreported.
That's the thing is that if you're in, again, like I said, if you're in a national park and you disappear, there's not going to be much documentation unless a local agency handles it. If the park handles it, you're going to be able to find no documentation. I don't care how many file requests you put in. They're going to tell you the same thing. There's no documentation. And we all know a very well-known person has fought this very, very hard and been turned down. And he's a very credible person. Jay Pilates, in my mind, he's got a solid law enforcement background. Yeah, some of his theories are a little out there, but he's solid on what he does and on the information he requests. He knows what he's doing to get the information, and he gets turned down a lot from the Park Service now, not from local agencies, but I believe on some of these I believe on all of these, I'm going to say this, on all these disappearances where there's high strangeness, there's less than 10% chance, and there's always a chance that people want to disappear, so they disappear. I also believe that on these cases of high strangeness, there's outside influence. Not a person, not a, I don't know how to explain it, but there's
So you would
something,
say
there's something different about the woods on these searches too.
that was the other thing. Do you
there's
feel like the
something-
climate changes when in any of these disappearances, the climate or the tenor in the woods, just the sense?
I know that there are a lot of problems with technology. I know also in areas where people disappear, there seems to be a lot of ultramafic rock, so it's affecting the compasses. But again, an experienced, especially mountaineer trained person who's got that kind of background isn't going to be fooled by his compass given him, because he's going to know north, south, east, and west. Just, I believe anybody that spends enough time in the woods is going to have an internal bearing to some degree, right?
Well, you have to set it initially. You
Well,
have to.
again, but also with, like in this case, he hiked this trail before. He knew where he was. He knew where he was going to take pictures. He wanted to go there intentionally.
Yeah.
He knew where things were.
But then, I mean, this guy gets, I mean, it's just kind of crazy, very odd or peculiar that this guy comes up missing when he is essentially in a public place, especially from a vantage point that is well traveled. And then he comes up disappearing. But I wanted you to clarify something. You're saying that you think that there is it's 10% chance in these disappearances that 10% of the people that come up missing, or they want to come up missing, they want to disappear, but the other 90%,
yeah, 10 or less maybe. But I see it becoming more and more today because people have figured out they can walk and just be off the grid. In today's society, it's very easy to disappear.
Yeah. Do you feel like?
So you think some people are going feral?
Yeah. I think at some point they've had enough of society or have financial problems or whatever, and they're intentionally walking off.
But that's 10% or less.
10%. And I think that number's going up because of, especially after COVID, if you start looking at the number of missing people and things like that, part of it, yes, was because people were closed down in their houses and then went out and did stupid stuff because they'd never been in the woods, but they wanted to be outside. Yeah, I get some of that. But the number is on the rise, right? Like the disappearances of people that want to disappear, I think are the numbers going up. And I think some of these people have lost the grasp of reality and are literally going completely primitive. They have just, and I don't think that they're crazy per se or whatever you want to call them, I think that their reality has been skewed in some way. Not that they don't want to die, they don't want to do this or that. They also don't want to be around other people. Right? And I see this. I've seen this in the homeless community when I was in law enforcement. Some people have chose to be, not everybody. I don't want people to mistake what I'm saying. Not everybody chose to be homeless, but there are a high percentage of people that have chose to be homeless because they don't have the social norms or the skill to be part of society. And some of these people just want to be left alone. And 100 years ago, those people just would have went off and built a cabin in the woods and lived out in the woods and been on their own. Today, those people don't have those skills. Most people aren't taught the skills today how to go build anything on their own, right? Like everybody has a power tool. I know very few people that could go out in the woods with a hatchet and a bow saw and some string and survive
and create a shelter.
Yeah,
right?
I mean, it's a lost art, and it's becoming more. I see these people with bushcraft channels and this, and I see it's becoming popular again. I feel like my generation was probably the last generation that was taught those skills as part of everyday life.
But part of the ingraining of that skill or the development of that skill, and you talked about when you go to a new place, you automatically set. I don't even do that, but you automatically set the declination on your compass on your phone.
Well, I realized I was raised a little different.
Right.
Like I said, my dad's an engineer, but my dad also spent 9 months at the South Pole and climbed mountains all over the world, did some other stuff. So not the normal, everyday, typical engineer guy. Right, he was one of those engineers that if he could design it, he could build it with his hands as well. So he drilled that into us a lot. Self-sufficiency was something we were taught from very, very young. You got to be able to take care of yourself. You've got to be able to survive. You've got to be able to, you've got to be able to walk out of your house with a pocket knife and make it. And I'm not kidding. That's not an exaggeration. Probably not a pocket knife. I had a straight blade, so I still have it. A straight blade buck.
Yeah.
Straight blade buck that I've had since I was a kid. And we would go up to the cabin and my dad would turn us loose and say, "You got your knife, you got your survival kit. I'll see you on Monday."
Was there at any point in time in these disappearances where any common threads in the disappearances, was there any type of a condition or situation where you felt like that there was foul play or something that you just couldn't explain, that there was a lot of these folks are geared towards the cryptid community and that they like the cryptid stuff. Did you feel like, because when you grew up there, what you told me was, you said that it was common knowledge that there are boogers. Now, y'all call them Sasquatch. We call them boogers.
Bigfoot, yeah.
Bigfoot. But it was common knowledge there. I mean, it's like
you
that.
grew up in Washington. You grew up anywhere out of Seattle or any of the big cities. Anybody that spends time in the woods up there knows.
Well, I showed you that picture. I go to the airport. I flew into the airport in Portland over
Everybody
there.
knows.
And they've got it. They've got a damn wood carving of, it's about 7 foot tall of Sasquatch right in the airport.
Everybody knows that Bigfoot, boogers, like I said, whatever you want to call them, exist up there. Not everybody. Everybody's been told. Not everybody listens, but the people that spend enough time in the woods can't deny it.
But did you ever sense that when you were there, was this prior to any encounters that you had, or during encounters where you sensed that there might have been this type of strange activity?
Yeah, I
with the disappearances.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying, is that these disappearances are not, there's outside influence on these disappearances.
Not
human.
Not human, but outside
not criminal, no, yes, outside influences.
I mean, because you're in big sky country there.
We're talking about areas where you could go over a ridge and not see anybody for 10 days if you kept walking.
Yeah.
We're talking about areas where there's enough open terrain and areas out there, a tribe of people could live and never be found. We're talking about areas that you, unless you're flying over it, unless you hike in on foot or ride in on a horse, you're not getting to. It's not going to happen. There's just not roads there.
Right.
And if there were roads there, the Department of Natural Resources, the Forest Service, and the Parks Department don't keep up the roads anymore.
And you got blowdowns and all that.
You got all kinds of
Yeah.
stuff.
So, I mean, because
Locked gates.
I've
That's
been-
another thing.
yeah.
The big thing now is they're locking up a lot of these roads because of forest fires and everything else.
Yeah, they're doing that everywhere. They're doing that locking gates.
There's spots up by our cabin where we used to go. We went up and it was a big old quarry. We used to go up there and shoot because it was safe, surrounded by rock on three sides. Right? Not going to have any problem up there. You can't get up there anymore. They put a gate outside of it.
So do you feel like because this is another thing now the southeast or even the northeast is going to be considerably different than down here in the south and then in the northwest. When they lock gates and so forth, it's a lot of times. Would you suggest that it is not because of potentially nefarious activity as much as it is potentially forest fires or people starting forest fires or being susceptible to?
I can tell you in California for sure, the reason they started locking everything up there was because of the forest fire problem. They started locking off the wilderness areas because people would inevitably go, hey, we can't have fires because it hasn't rained in a year.
Yeah.
They'd go in there and start fires. I think they also are having a problem, and this is from experience, firsthand experience. In these rural areas, the state and the federal government started locking off stuff because of drug labs. I mean, hell, I can't count how many times when we got called to a possible lab out in the middle of nowhere down a empty country road where there's nothing out there but logging. And there would be a lab in a truck or a lab set up on the side of the road in the brush. They're trying to, or people, the other thing, and this really pisses me off, people dump their garbage out there. Dirty diapers and this stuff, that stuff doesn't go away. I don't want to
biodegradable.
Yeah, I don't want to. If you want to dump food waste out there, whatever. You want to dump your stuff that you would normally, people would normally compost to put in the garden, that's one thing, right? But not garbage. People go, I understand, I have friends that hunt bear, they bait the bears with donuts and all. No problem with that, that's different. But they also put, stale bread stuff out. They take them out of the packages, but I've seen hunters not sleeve everything in the package and throw it in a pile.
Wow.
And that's just disgusting. I'm not a tree hugger, but I think that we are the stewards of this planet and we have to take care of the planet.
Well, I mean, I don't
I agree with you there.
100% agree. So you kind of establish your bona fides as far as your law enforcement background, and then your search and rescue experiences. Can you speak to before we get back to the booger stuff, I want to kind of ask you a question, and then I want to, if you're ready, transition into some of the paranormal stuff that you experienced while on patrol.
Absolutely.
But you're saying that you felt like that there was a significant percentage of these disappearances that were untraceable, that were nefarious, that could have been related to cryptid type activity. Is that what I'm hearing you say?
Cryptid?
Yep. Like Bigfoot.
No, I get that. I understand what you're saying. Yes, but I also, because some of the things I've seen, I cannot deny the possibility of influence from extraterrestrial type.
Yeah.
Some type of
Okay.
activity.
Yeah, that's fair. But it's paranormal.
It's paranormal. Yes, it's a paranormal based activity. However you want to define that. There's just so much oddity in it. You can't. Again, what if you can't explain what happened, the only logical explanation is paranormal. That if you've got this overarching group of people, and again, it's usually a lot of it's white males, early 20s to mid 30s.
That's crazy.
Most of them are educated, right? They're in college, out of college, but they're educated. And a good percentage of them are outdoor people, hunters, hikers, backwoodsmen, people that know what they're doing.
Well, there's a lot of that up there too.
People that shouldn't disappear. I mean, people that disappear. Perfect example.
Go
ahead.
Yes. When you was in the search and rescue, and also when you went into law enforcement, when people disappeared and y'all didn't find a body, and if you used dogs and they came to a point that they couldn't track what they were tracking, and then me being a hunter, I've raised a lot of hound dogs and bird dogs, and I've seen them where they can't trail the deer off, or they couldn't tree the coon, or they couldn't find the quail to point. And there's a lot of variations that can happen there. Moisture in the air, moisture in the ground, the temperature. There's a lot of things can play variance with that. But because on certain days, we knew certain days it wasn't no sense carrying the hounds to the woods because the hounds wasn't going to pick up tracks good. But now a lot of people have talked about a lot of times, like on our club, when we would wound a deer and we would take dogs in there to try to track the deer. And a lot of times we get to a certain spot and the dogs just couldn't trail the deer off anymore. We would walk big circles and we would never find anything. Now, some of us contributed that to the boogers, picked them up, walked off with them. But we don't know that for a fact. But in y'all's groups, when things were going on and people went missing or this happened, and did y'all ever really sit there and talk amongst yourselves? Hey,
yeah.
do we think a Bigfoot snatched this person, or some kind of paranormal went on? Because
Absolutely.
I know you get your percentage of feral people, and then the people that probably just had an accident.
There are some people that have accidents, you never find the body. That's true. Absolutely, we talked about things like that. It was not we didn't discuss it out where there was a lot of public. Let me put it that way.
That's what he's asking. Can you take us behind the veil and give us an idea of the discussion about paranormal and your discussions in-house, departmentally about that?
Because,
but
again,
have that
we had that type of discussion of, in search and rescue and when I was in law enforcement, because I saw things in law enforcement that were strange. And I'll talk about that. But when we would have people that would disappear like that, like we take field notes, right? Most of the searchers keep a notebook, a journal, whatever you want to call it. Incident command people always have to keep something, but I always like to keep a journal, where we searched, what we did, how, you'd sit down and talk at night because a lot of times you didn't go home at the end of the day. You'd search till after dark. Sometimes you'd go back to a base camp. Sometimes, depending on the search, you might just camp out. You might just stay out in your tent. Inevitably, you're going to sit around and talk. And a lot of times when we'd have – the other thing about search and rescue is you get a core group. And those people don't generally go away, if that makes sense. Like the core group almost always stays. It's like in any organization. And when you spent that much time out in the woods with other people, you're not afraid to tell them anything at that point. I mean, they know you better than your family sometimes. Because you're out there putting just like in law enforcement or military, or another firefighter, paramedic, you're putting your life in somebody else's hands, even on a search. Because, again, a wrong step or wrong turn or whatever, still can happen. You bond, and when you're bonded like that, you have a tendency to talk. And you wouldn't hold back because it became hey man, this is another one of those weird searches. Like we've been out here 3 days and have found nothing. What do you think's going on? And again, it wasn't something we talked about even around some of the search incident commanders because they were professionals at that kind of stuff, right? That's what they did for a living. But we would certainly talk about it, that there had to be outside influences. People don't just disappear into thin air. It just doesn't happen.
Not that frequently.
Not that frequently, they don't ever really disappear into thin air. It's almost always some trace. I mean, you've got spots where I know we've searched, and 2 years later they'll find something. When I know damn good and well we searched that area. A couple years later they'll find a tin issue that I know wasn't there. Hell, they found bones and stuff a couple years later that I know damn good and well was searched multiple times. The other thing that's happened is that we've been on searches where we have found people where they can't explain what happened.
So they're disoriented.
Completely disoriented. That's the other thing I was going to get there.
Time lapses or anything?
Yeah, they don't know. First of all, you find those kind of people, usually they think they've been gone a short amount of time, right? And we may be 3 days into the search.
Wow.
3
days.
Yeah, we've literally found people within 100 yards of where they disappeared after multiple days.
And y'all covered that area.
And multiple times. Like we found this girl on a trail that to the search area, everybody had to walk up and down it. She thought she'd been gone, walked out of camp for 20 minutes. No drugs, no alcohol, no injuries. She was dehydrated, hungry, and cold. No scratches, bruises, nothing. It's like she literally walked out and went and sat in the cabin for 3 days before we found her. And she was literally, when we found her, within 5 feet of the trail in open space. Literally disoriented, like didn't know. She doesn't remember nights. She doesn't remember days. She doesn't remember if she'd eaten. She should have been dead, honestly. Didn't have a backpack, didn't have water, didn't have any of these things that she should have had because she was walking away from camp to go down to this creek, right? 100 yards away, and just disappeared off the face of the earth for 3 days. And then she just, like somebody dropped her out of the sky and was there. And that's not that uncommon for people just to show up like that. It's not that uncommon for people to lose time in the woods like that. Even seasoned people, not even that have disappeared, but people that go out in the woods, some of these areas. Oh yeah, we were out here hanging out for a couple hours, and it's like, dude, you left at 9 o'clock this morning, and now it's getting dark. They don't have that sense that there's lost time. And when you almost always, when you follow up with these people, because they almost always the hospital checked up, they almost always have sleep issues post disappearing like that, and they almost always have panic attacks after that.
But they can't explain it.
No, yeah, they don't have any. Some of these people start seeing dream state glimpses of what's going on. But a lot of them have never figured out what happened in that time frame. They just don't. It's just gone. It's like somebody turned the switch off and then turned the switch back on. It's literally like that. It's like I can remember right up to this second, and then I remember this second next. And there's no, like I said, there's no injury. They've all been transported. They've all had CTs, and they've all had MRIs, and they've had all these, things. You're thinking they've had a stroke or they've had this, or they have none of those things.
But they have a sort of a PTSD.
Yes.
So.
And then their fight or flight instinct kicks in big time. And it's not when we initially find them. It's usually later at the hospital or once they've gone home that starts kicking in.
So before we transition to sort of the stuff that in the paranormal, like where you were doing searches in the population centers and so forth, you're saying that just to clarify, that there's behind the veil, so to speak, departmentally, it's a common occurrence to discuss the potential influence of the paranormal or cryptid component in these disappearances. That you discuss this openly, or maybe not openly, but within certain compartmental.
Yes, no, definitely not openly.
Places.
Definitely not openly, because that's back then. And I think it's probably more acceptable now to talk about. But back then, you definitely didn't. That was not something that you would have talked about in the open. That's something, if I was in a patrol car with my buddy, especially in law enforcement, or we were roadsiding with guys you work with all the time, you talk about it. Search and rescue, we'd talk about it while we were out in the woods or while we were training. Like, man, that was a weird search. We didn't find anything. We didn't find this. A lot of times we'd take those searches and break them down for training.
Well, you said y'all journaled those. So essentially, what you did is you created maybe a log for specific instances, and then you broke them down into percentages.
Exactly. Well, then the incident commanders, again, on anything that's not national park related, then incident commanders keep a log of every. It's like a firefighter when they go to a fire. You know, they have a check in and check out. They have an incident before. Same on search and rescue. You have a first initial. It starts at the initial call out whenever the deputies, whoever goes out there, and then whoever becomes the incident commander starts a log. So everything I bring back, I radio, or I bring back in, hey, we searched grid, whatever, no signs, nothing. Or, hey, we found a shoe. Okay, then that's plotted. And all these things are noted. And all that stuff's public information. Right?
Except when it's in the national forest.
Because apparently they don't keep records.
Right. Well, that's what they say.
That's what they say.
So can you transition into, if you're through, I don't want to push or nobody else has a question, but can you transition into some of the paranormal stuff when you're on patrol in the population centers, like in Seattle and so forth?
Yeah. There are things that I have seen that if a person didn't believe in evil, pure evil, they would after you see these things. I'm going to give you a good example, and I won't give all the details, but we kind of talked about this. We were contracted for a gated community. 2 officers at night contracted. We had basically our own office, our own holding cell, everything in this community. The community had a lake, had trails, had everything.
In Washington. Right?
In Washington, yes. They started having a lot of problems in the older section of the I don't want to say neighborhood, we call it the neighborhood, but in this community that bordered a power line road. So we had ATVs, so we could patrol wherever we wanted. You know, we didn't have to always be on foot. And we used to patrol that perimeter a lot because we catch a lot of stuff back there. A lot of drug activity, people moving drugs off and on. We got a lot of drug arrests there. One night, my partner and I were back there on our ATVs, and we always worked 2-man teams. And because of what we were dealing with, we always we were dressed more in a tactical style because it was more rural. We always carried rifles because some of the area around that was definitely getting worse as far as lab activity. We ran into a group of people, at least some of them were, that were dressed in dark robes, and we could hear them chanting and singing. And as they crossed the road, one of them turned towards me, looked at me, and all I could see was glowing eyes. They also had no legs, as if they were floating. And I have never in my life had such a, I don't want to say panic feeling, but I've never had such a feeling of dread and such a feeling of evil as I did then. Enough that my partner and I left the area very, very quickly, and did not return to the area until it was daylight, when we could go in there and search. There's some we found an altar on the other side of the road, back farther in the woods. Found some mutilated animals, skulls of goat. Found a goat skull. Actually, not even a skull, a head. Mounted above this altar. We found, I would guess there had been maybe 100 people back there at one point, looking at the traffic. We called the team in. We dismantled the camp. It was on state property. And they went in, and we put a team out there for a week, and they never showed back up.
So I know you don't want to go in full disclosure, but can you talk about the entity or the whatever that being was that you saw? Kind of.
Yeah, I'll just say it straight up. It was a demon. It was completely evil. There was nothing redemptive about it. It was, my partner was Catholic and not ultra religious until then, and then he started going back to the church very regularly.
But you saw it essentially float off.
It was floating.
And
there
it
was
wasn't
no
possible for it to move in the way that it
there was
moving.
no legs. There was no feet. There was no. It was evil.
Was this the dumpster incident?
No, it's different. Dumpster incident was just a return fire thing, but this thing was evil. I mean, it was. Again, I've never felt so. I'm not panicked, but I've never felt so.
Helpless,
Maybe that, I don't know if that's the right term. I've never felt. Never had my fight or flight instinct kicked in like that. Let's put it that way.
And y'all decided just to book it. I mean, to get out of there.
Yeah, I mean, sort of. Yeah, we'll stick with that.
Yeah. All right. So, what about the underground stuff in the underground cities in Seattle?
In Pierce County, in Tacoma, actually, there are a bunch of tunnels underneath the downtown area that were built by the Chinese when they were working on the railroads. And there are now very few access points. There is an old Model T complete down in there that will probably run, put gas in it. There are so few access points that getting in there is now the only way you can get in is to rappel down from one of the access points into the tunnels, and then you have to climb back out.
Did y'all have to rappel down there?
The first time I went in there, yeah, that's how we got in. We rappelled down. As they were tearing down a building to put something new in, they opened up an access point. One night, we're checking the access point because they'd leveled it, and so it was just going to be open because they were going to send an archaeological team in there. Pictures, just kind of some people from the city to check it out and make sure how, engineers had to see how safe it was and all this other stuff. So we had to check it quite a bit. And I saw and it maybe it was somebody in a costume or something, but what looked like the modern depiction of a vampire, sort of. And there was a lot of weird incidences down there, this whole downtown section, especially after the tunnels were open. But there's a area down there where there is an old hotel where they built over the hotel, but the pool and stuff is still there and it's all still active. You can still use the pool. It's a fallout shelter now. They used it during World War II and post, Cold War for, us. I don't know. It won't come out of my head, but anyway, they used it for emergency sheltering stuff. So they've kept that all active. But there's just a lot of strange things. I think that when they opened that access point up, they released something that probably was not meant to be released. I feel that when they closed those tunnels off originally, and this is just because we try to do some research. There's a Stone Public Library. Their archive section happens to be downtown, where all the older books and that stuff are. We were able to find some newspaper articles and some firsthand accounts.
Of what?
Of some strange homicides, disappearances, and a lot of them were explained off because it was Chinese people that were disappearing, and they were just they're leaving the area because they we treat the Chinese people pretty much like slaves.
Is there anyone that sticks out that you know or remember the details of?
There was a group of 3 young kids that disappeared. 2 boys and a girl that were going from a camp, tents. There was like a tent city. The area they were going from was farther down the waterfront, probably a mile away, but it was just a clear path, and they disappeared on the walk, and they found a foot of one of the boys and a finger of one of the girls, and that's all they ever found.
So they're dismembered, essentially.
I think that they intentionally, when they sealed those tunnels up, because they left a car down there. There was a car still there. There's also people have gone down and there was alcohol, and they found other things down in there, as they were getting access. And the way we got access was a friend of ours owned a hotel, and he had a access point. The first time I ever went down there. When it was not an official, this was an unofficial thing the first time I went in there. I think that they had sealed something in. I don't know for sure.
That's just the overarching sense that you get on this.
The gut feeling I get. You go in there, again, you're in the dark area, no lights except for the light you have, so you've already got that sense, but it felt like a tomb. Best way I could describe it.
Because I can tell really that this has kind of impacted you to a pretty significant extent. Even though this has happened, about 3.5 or 4 decades ago, about 3.5 decades ago.
Battery's dying.
Probably about 3 decades ago, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
I got it. It just wasn't plugged in good.
So
Sorry, guys. Go ahead.
You good, Sher? Becca?
Yeah, we're
You
good.
Okay.
Yeah, I was just trying to light some of these torches.
Computer came unplugged.
Oh yeah. Okay. Sorry about that.
What other paranormal stuff sticks out into your mind? In your memory, really.
an incident that happened when I was a kid. When I was very young, we lived in the city of Tacoma, and not far from the school. I was close enough. I walked to school every day. There was a house across from the school that had been abandoned as long as I can remember. It'd been abandoned as long as my grandparents that lived there could remember. And as kids, we decided it would be fun to go in and check it out. And I fell through the floor into the basement. And I know damn good and well that something attacked me in that basement. I came out my parents were like, oh, it's because you fell through the floor. I came out all scratched up, had a bite mark on my leg.
Really?
Yeah. And my friend Chewy, poor kid, half Japanese and half black kid, real smart, sharp as a tack, great kid. He's a biologist at MIT. He went to MIT. He's a professor there now. But he tried to get down in there to get me. They couldn't find a door, so he jumped down in the hole. When we got back out, they ended up, there was furniture, and they shoved furniture down so we climbed out. He had bite marks from his knee all the way down to his ankle.
Y'all fell into a hole, into a
basement.
basement.
Couldn't get out.
Bite marks.
Yeah.
Like what kind of bite marks? Like from teeth?
Yeah, they were teeth. They looked human.
Did you feel them?
Yeah, but I thought it was because we couldn't see in there, so I didn't know if I was just running into stuff, like if there was old furniture and crap down there. But I think I got in more trouble for that than
dude. Some of this stuff I've never even heard. My name's David. Nice to meet you.
Hi.
We've only known each other for what, 15 years now.
That's the
But
rum and coke that's working.
Now, when you went into that basement, were y'all after someone, or did y'all get a call to go to that basement?
No, I was a kid. We were young.
Oh, this kid, okay.
Yeah, we were just playing. My neighborhood kids, out doing stuff they shouldn't be doing, going to old abandoned house.
Okay.
We were just being kids. Thought we were the Hardy Boys or something. And go rummage around and find something good. I don't know. Stupid kids.
Okay.
I have, and I don't think we got to talk about this. So once we moved on the Olympic Peninsula, my grandparents lived next to us, and my mom and dad lived in one place. And strange things happened all the time. Like you'd set something down on one counter, turn around, it would be moved. Lights would come on. You'd hear, weirdest thing, you'd hear bagpipe music at night in the woods. And there was nothing behind us. There's literally 500 acres of woods out there. Interstate on one side and a creek on the other. So there was no houses back there. One night,
is pretty commonplace.
Yeah. One night I was staying at my grandparents' house. I remember why. I was sleeping on the floor in their bedroom. I have no idea why. I don't remember. But the light kept coming on in the closet. My grandpa got up and pulled this cord. I turned it off. It came on again. Did that a couple times. Unscrewed the bulb, set the bulb on the shelf, and the bulb came on the shelf.
Wow.
My grandpa got up and closed the door. Things like that would happen. Literally, you could put dishes in one cupboard at night. You get up in the morning and they'd be moved. Whatever it was, also liked to move butter dishes for some. Like there was a dish with butter, damn sure it was going to get moved. Just a lot of weird things like that. The area, there was a big farmstead at the end of the road, and they basically controlled the whole valley. Where our house was kind of where the slaughterhouse part of the property was. They had cattle. And you could go out there at night. We built a little shooting range. First time we did it, we shot into this bank and went back there at night. We were going to shoot at night, and the whole ground was glowing from all the deterioration from the phosphorus of the bones. And it was the strangest thing. But you go out there playing around in the woods, you'd find cow skulls and chunks of bone and all kinds of stuff. My best friend lived at the end of the road and kind of up over the rise. And when they were putting their barn in, the old barn had fell down, so they were just cutting it off, and they were going to pour a concrete slab. They must have found, I don't know, 20 or 30 cows worth of bones piled up in this big old pit. Just bones. They probably pushed the cows, and it's probably where they put the dead cows. We were guessing, right? Like they just anything that died on the property went in this hole, and eventually they covered up, built whatever. But that was another weird thing. That whole valley where we were at, we had a pond that was close, and there was. We always called them devil worshippers. How we didn't know what they were. We were kids. You could hear them over there at night partying and whatever, and they built a little altar and whatever. You know, they were probably other high school kids or something. We were little, younger. What's a little, but you're on the Olympic Peninsula. There's not a whole. You can't really get in trouble out there. I mean, there was an old open pit dump across the freeway and up the other side that we used to go out and run up and play in the dump and find stuff, things like that. But those woods, you could be out there in the middle of the day and the woods would get a strange haze. Like you couldn't see through the trees. It wasn't fog, but it was like it was blurry. That's a good example. Blurry.
Like a portal type deal?
Yeah, kind of. It was weird. Like I said, we'd hear bagpipe music coming from back there. Nobody back there.
Brother, I've never heard any of this stuff. Okay.
I've experienced stuff like that.
What's that?
I said I've experienced stuff like that.
The
mysterious musicians in the woods.
It's strange. Like, you think maybe I was somebody back there playing guitar, but bagpipes? It's just weird.
Right.
Everybody heard it. It wasn't just me. Like we'd camp out in the woods and you'd hear it in the middle of the night. Like just a lot of tunnels out there, where the water ran through the hills and whatnot, and overturned trees where the root balls were up, and we made forts in there and all that kind of stuff. But the weird thing is, one of the times I got lost was in those woods in the snow.
And this is in your backyard.
Yeah, literally, like from where we had this tree fort built, we built a rappelling tower on the tree fort, did some other stuff, built a cage, and
Yeah.
Anyway, put each other in.
I get it.
Anyway, we watched too many Vietnam movies and stuff when we were kids.
Just a sidebar issue. We don't need to get into this, but these knuckleheads would go out with guns, play essentially like they were at war, and build cages and put each other in cages like they were prisoners of war. That's the type of stuff. This is the type of stuff this guy would get into.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, we were, our parents told us to go play on the freeway, and we did, literally.
They invaded an airfield. There's all kinds of stories.
Oh, yeah, we did all kinds of stuff.
But going back to this disorientation
So
issue.
we were out there, and our tree fort that we built was 200 yards from the house, maybe, in the woods. And we were out there, and I'd gone out. I don't remember what I went out there for, and it had been snowing off and on. And between the house and the tree fort and that 200 yards, I got so disoriented and so turned around in that snow that if I didn't know better, I'd swear I stepped through something and then walked out of it again.
Did you lose track of time?
I don't know. Snowing.
But
Maybe.
You're just completely disoriented.
Completely like from, the house is that direction to like, where the hell am I at? To like, oh, the house is that direction again. So
you're disoriented, and then you found your bearing.
Yeah, but in a weird kind of way. Like, I don't know how to explain it. It was literally like I walked into something, a strange area. It was like literally like I walked into an area that I hadn't been in before. It was snowing, and then I walked out of it because I knew the direction. I was either gonna run back into the tree fort, run into the creek, run into the freeway, or run into the house. Right? Like, I'm going to run into something I know. I'm going to find my bearings. So I just.
No, I'm pretty familiar with that part of the country because I spent some time up in Idaho and in the Northwest and all that, hunted and so forth. and I know there's a lot of First Nations activity, but I'm not really sure about this particular locale. What was there a lot of First Nations activity where there?
No,
No?
not that I'm aware of. No, there was no tribal activity that I probably was because the way the bay was there, but not that I'm aware of. And we were a ways up from the water anyway. We would have been. I attribute it to whatever. I don't know. And I wasn't the only person that got disoriented back there either. So
Any of your brothers?
yes, my second oldest brother and my youngest brother at the same time got disoriented together one time in the middle of the day. No snow, no nothing.
Did your grandparents? I mean, did your parents ever warn you about going back there? Were they aware of any of this activity?
We weren't. They did. We were mutants, dude. They turned us loose. Like literally, like, hey man, it's Friday night.
Take a hike. We'll see you.
got-
We'll see you in the day.
My mom would have. I'd have all the boys over. There'd be like 12 of us. She'd make a huge pot of spaghetti on Friday night. We'd eat dinner and we'd be gone. And we'd come back in Sunday, have tacos, and she'd take everybody home. They'd never see us the whole week. We'd be gone.
So this is stuff you really never.
Oh yeah,
discussed.
no. I had an uncle that was a retired colonel. Well, I guess he was still active at that point in the National Guard when they still had sea rats. So he'd bring us cases of sea rats. Only thing he'd say is, "You can't smoke the cigarettes. Whatever else you want, bring us the cigarettes." So we all summer long. I mean, at one point, God bless my mom. She took 9 of us boys up to the cabin, just her, for 13 days. Just her. I don't know how she survived.
So when y'all were up there,
Mhm.
okay, can you talk about? Because I'm going to talk about the neighborhood that we're currently in too at some point. But when you're up at the cabin, can you explain give a proximity or just a general proximity where that is, and then your experiences, your encounters with either paranormal or the booger activity that you experienced, and tell how things changed and how it impacted you, or how you had a sense of what it was.
We've hunted this area called Packwood, Washington. It's off White Pass. My whole life, we have a cabin up in that area from Mount Rainier, Mount St. Helens.
And there's a river that goes through there, right?
Yep.
Let's get real specific.
No, not they can figure it out.
Yeah.
I mean, anybody that wants to look on a map can probably figure it out. Anyway, we've hunted up there our whole lives. Still do. We still have a cabin up there. Matter of fact, my best friend, I think, is up at the cabin right now. So we spent a good amount of our summers up there and our weekends with my dad up there. The first time I experienced Bigfoot, 14 or 15 maybe. Todd and I were hunting.
Brother?
Yeah, best friend.
Okay.
And it was really misty because it's Washington. It's always misty up there in the fall. Just the way it is. You know, they don't get a lot of rain. They just get a lot of mist all the time. My dad had taken us up to the top of the mountain and dropped us off, and we were working our way back down hunting. And the woods got really still and really quiet. And like dead quiet. Not a sound, not a bird, not a tree creaking, not anything. And then there was a funky smell. Not like a skunk, but a pungent, musty kind of.
Putrid sweet.
Yeah, well, yeah. Almost not like the smell of death, but that not like a retching smell, but trying to figure what the best. We'll just say musky. We'll just call it that because I don't know how else to describe it.
Did you recognize what it was right off the bat?
No. I mean, we'd always heard stories and stuff like that. And And so we continued to hike, and we both became very, very uncomfortable. It's funny because we were young, but we both had pistols. He carried a Colt Python, and I carried a 1911. And back then, because I had my rifle, I usually didn't carry one in the chamber on the 1911. I chambered one in the 1911, checked my rifle. I had an old 8mm Mauser that had been converted. He was hunting with he still hunts with it, Ruger #1.
But y'all were out
7
actually
mag.
hunting, and this is when you experienced this.
Yeah.
Okay.
And we got this really. We spent a lot of time in the woods, so we knew something wasn't right. Our first instinct at that point was cougar.
But it got. I mean, here's where I'm kind of going with this, and I wanted to ask you something else. But because you spend time in the woods, you're pretty well acclimated to what's going on. You have a feel for it, because when you get out into that environment, all of your senses become heightened. I know mine did, but you knew
more
something
comfortable
changed.
in the woods and in a police car than I am anywhere else in the world.
I believe it. But you knew at that point in time that something was different about what the tenor, if you will, the climate of the woods was different than what you had experienced before.
Exactly. We
So then what happened?
First thing we heard was heavy footfall. And that's when we knew it wasn't a cougar for sure at that point. We're like, that's not a cougar. We also knew something was behind us. What I think it was, I think a log had rolled. Looking back on it now, but we were on edge and we were young, and 14 or 15. I think a log had rolled or a rock. Next thing we heard the trees tapping, and then we heard heavy tapping from over here, and heavy tapping from over here.
Stuff from different. So I've never
Different
heard
angles.
different angles.
Different angles. It was not just one thing. I feel it was Bigfoot. Todd and I've had lengthy discussions about this.
So you're hearing what you felt like were tree knocks in different. In
proximity, but not coming from the same direction. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Never heard them talking back and forth. I know it's pretty common that time. But the tree knocked and it stopped. And then we decided we need to move a little faster down the hill. But no cell phones or anything. So we got to go back to the cabin. We'll walk back to the cabin one way or another.
How far was this from your cabin?
I don't know. It's a long way. It seemed like a long ways.
Okay, because you got your cabin, and then you have the river, and then the ridge.
You know where the ridge is?
Yeah.
Where I showed you where the base of the rocks is.
Yeah.
We were literally under that rock face. It was happening.
So not very far.
No, and I also think, and only that I think that there are caves up in there, because one time we were glassing up from the meadow. Actually, we were using this weird thing. We were using a telescope. We used to watch the stars up there. We were upstairs in the cabin. We were looking up, and I could swear the light hit just right, and there was a cave entrance. But I could never get back. It was so far around, I could never get there. Anyway, so that's beside the point. So instead of normally we'd traverse across, because we'd hunted this area, we traversed across and then just kind of zigzag back down. We crossed, and there was a huge gorge down there. We got to this side of the gorge, and we literally went as fast as we could down the edge of the gorge.
But this thing didn't track. It didn't follow.
No,
you.
It followed us.
It followed
us till we crossed the road.
But you hit a certain point. That's when you felt like you were surrounded. You back off of that, and then it follows you back, tracks you back to a certain point, to the river or what?
No, as you're coming down through it, it goes into an open clear cut. It was just light underbrush because it had been logged off before that. And then you cross the road, and you go up a ridge, and you're down to the meadow where the cabin is. Well, once we crossed that first road, whatever was behind us wasn't there anymore.
Yeah. The reason I'm asking this because I've never been there. We're gonna hunt up there. I'm gonna go hunt elk up there. But he's given me topo maps, which I've studied, so I'm fairly familiar with that area, at least loosely familiar with it, I'd say. So that's why he's speaking to me like like I know what he's talking about, and I'm asking him specifically about this. So then after that, what other experiences? Like you had one with your brother, I think, right? Or your brothers had a couple.
My brothers we've had another one. So I never, who else was this like that? There was 3 or 4 of us hiking down by Mount St. Helens, and we were hiking to a place called the Ape Caves.
The Ape Caves, yeah. Okay.
Okay. And the reason they call it the Ape Caves is because the guys that discovered it that was the name of their organization. They were
Really?
Yeah.
No other reason?
Well, I don't know. Maybe the lava tubes is what they are. The lava tubes.
Uh-huh.
And we were hiking in there, and on the way in there, it was the first time I ever heard, because there's nobody else. First, there's snow on the ground, and it's closed, and we're not supposed to be in there. But that's never stopped us from going anywhere we're not supposed to go. That is the first time I ever heard them hollering back and forth to each other.
So you actually heard vocalists?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
You never? I mean, I've never.
I thought I told you this.
Bruh, no.
Yeah, that back and forth on the way in. So you had to. Normally, you could drive within a couple hundred yards, but because of the snow, we had to hike in. So we went up there at dusk, and stayed overnight in the cave. But anyway, as we were hiking in, there was no other tracks in there, nothing other than some deer. They started talking back and forth all the way in, and we contemplated. Whoa, what's going on? Whoa, what do they got? What do they got? Rabbit? Hold on 1 second. What did they chase?
Maybe each other?
No, they were chasing something furry.
We're sort of out on the cusp of the country, so there's occasional coyotes or rabbits and stuff, and his cats are out. So that's what we're looking at.
Oh, okay.
Ron, you
Now-
go
So you actually heard what you thought were Sasquatches talking back and forth to each other?
Samurai chatter?
I would say it was more guttural. How do I explain it? Not grunting, but more.
Kind of like this, like that.
Yeah, more like you couldn't understand quite what they were saying.
Yeah.
Like it was somebody, but you couldn't. You know how like when they distort somebody's voice or somebody talks to
That's
the
what
voice
he
box?
was doing. So it was,
Yeah. You know, like when they talk to
Yeah,
the voice box?
yeah.
It was that kind of sound.
was it fast or was it slow? Or
No,
what?
it was a conversation.
Did you ever hear something say moi, like that?
Not that I remember, but it's also been 20, 30. I gotta think about it. It's been a long time. Okay, hold on. I'll be right back. Hold on.
Yeah, that's fine.
No, Ron, you can't hear that?
I can't still believe y'all daylight. We're dark here and y'all
Yeah,
daylight.
Well, I mean, it's just about 8:40. We're not going to get dark for probably about another 20, 25 minutes. He got up because his cats were chasing something around the yard. Because back behind us is kind of field and so forth. So they're looking in the bushes right now.
Well, y'all are about what 8 to 10 hours.
Roughly
Well-
about 10 hours to the west of you. That's why.
Yeah.
So that's why it's
I never
still
forget when I was in Wyoming and I come out of that plant that afternoon and said, "Woo, man, that's a heck of a thunderstorm coming out of the east." And that old boy that lived there said, "That ain't a thunderstorm." He said, "That's dark coming." So
Yeah.
I'm like, "Dark?" He said, "Yeah, it's dark coming."
Well, that was the other thing I was going to ask him, but I didn't because he was talking about disorientation in the mountains. And I talked about this a little bit when I was on your channel, but you get into the mountains and I'm only kind of doing some fills here because he's chasing his cat at the moment. But when I was in the mountains, I got caught out and I was elk hunting. And I mean, you're out there 40, 50 miles from the nearest town. And I'm talking about a small town on a 2-lane highway. Then you're another 45 minutes to an hour off the road. And then from there, we're about where I was hunting in that particular instance was probably about another 25 to 30 minutes from camp. And you get stuck out in the mountains on a sudden rainstorm, and it's pretty scary because you have like we would have GPS. I would have my electronic GPS, and then I would have a orienteering compass. And on that the GPS, it was a Rhino, and you'd start trying to communicate, and your communication was not only garbled, but because of the electricity that's in the air, when you talked on it, you could hear the echo, and then it would draw lightning. And it's incredibly, it's unsettling. Let's put it that way, because and that's why I was asking him and kind of drawing him out about some of his experiences in the mountains and getting disoriented and lost, and how important it is not only to go with a partner, which I haven't always done, but when you do, if you do encounter any type of interference or opposition or disorientation, and you will do it when you're out there, you've got to keep your bearings about you, because it absolutely will put you, because you don't do it on a daily basis. And even if you did, it is a very unsettling feeling, because you don't really know what's going to happen next. I mean, one moment it's about, 55, 60 degrees and it's sun shining. And then within minutes it's dropped, 15 degrees or better. It's overcast, and you have a shower followed by a lightning storm. So I was asking him because I know a lot of people are outdoors people here, and it doesn't matter whether you go in the mountains or you're out somewhere, say in the Appalachian area or further deep into the southeast over in Florida or up in the Northeast. You've got to maintain your bearings and always exercise your best practices, which is, for starters, to be prepared, because it will twist you and turn you in areas you don't want to go. And that's where, when people panic, that's when bad things happen. Yeah, people die. You about ready to come back?
Give me 1 second.
Okay.
Well, when he comes back, if we don't mind, we'll get him to talk a little bit about that game warden too.
Yeah, I'm going to have him talk about the game warden here in just a second. There's a couple other stories, and then he can touch on the game warden, and then maybe we'll ask questions. But actually, Will's a pretty skilled guy because he's herding cats right now.
He's herding cats, so
yeah,
he's been just farm hand, huh?
Yeah.
And if you herd cats, you're doing pretty good.
Yep.
That's what I'm saying.
They got a mind of their own.
I think they got a rabbit, but I don't know.
All right.
They did. They took it in the house. Sorry about that.
Oh, that's all right.
Think
On
they,
this
think
show,
they got a
we don't
rabbit.
worry about things. I mean, it's just
Real.
we want it to be real. We want people to be comfortable, and so it ain't about being perfect or.
So back to the Squatch business. Talk about maybe one or two other experiences, and if you would hit on the game warden, your discussion with him.
Okay. Well, kind of back to where we were at about going to the ape caves. The interesting thing there was we never got that unsettled feeling.
So you didn't always feel like an atmospheric change.
No, I did. It didn't
during these encounters.
It did not make me feel like it when I was hunting. It didn't. It did not feel like it was there to do us any harm. It felt more like it was observing, not manipulating. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
Like
100%.
We've been we were staying in a tent one time during hunting season. Stupidest thing we ever did. When we got up there, the ground was already frozen, and it didn't get any better. We couldn't put tent stakes in; it was so frozen. I stuck a axe in a stump and hung a lantern over the handle, and the handle never got warm. But tells you how cold it was. That night, and it could have been a bear, but something was moving around the camp that was big, but not making a bunch of noise, if that makes sense. And the area we were camping in is huge for sightings up there. Huge. We were the only ones up on the whole mountain at this point, and the area was huge for that. We didn't hear it per se, but we could feel it more. That time, it wasn't an unsettling feeling. It was a change in the area, if that makes sense.
Mhm.
Like the physical area felt different from when
So there was kind of a change.
at that time. There definitely was a change. There was a change. We didn't. They weren't talking, but Todd and I were sitting in the tent, and put it this way, it made us feel uncomfortable enough. We just ended up driving to town and staying at my cousin's house. I left the tent, came back and got it in the morning.
How close have you ever seen any trackway or like footprints or any type of, say, weird structures in the woods at all?
We found some log piled, almost like a lean-to, that would have taken 2 or 3 adults to make. Adult men, big men like you and I, and Ron to make. That were over a downed log, a big old growth down log that had been placed on there.
Like a nest sort of thing?
Kind of. There was hair in there, but again,
Really?
yeah, but it could have been bear.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, because clearly somebody built the shelter, but whatever hair was in there, I don't know. The other weird thing was there was not like if a man built it, you
Uh-huh.
you normally build a fire pit or something.
Yeah.
None of that. And as I remember, there was a smell there too. Remember Todd saying something about the smell.
Like a lingering type of a smell?
Yeah, we took it. We thought maybe it was something that died in the area, but it could have been. We didn't see anything. We didn't. And there was no strange feeling. It was something we ran across. I think there has been a couple times when we were at the cabin in the winter when.
Yeah. That was the other thing I was going to ask you. Like at the cabin, have you heard or seen them or felt them in proximity or any type
Before we built the big cabin, it's a little one I told you was like small, one room.
That's still
Not
right.
even a toilet, right? Like it was just bunk beds. And my dad and I were up there one year, and we'd gone up and we'd gotten a whiteout driving up there in the Land Cruiser, and we got stuck up there, which was really fun. My dad, but on the third night, something, and we could see the prints. Something had walked around the cabin.
So you actually saw the footprints.
Yeah, but the problem is it had snowed so much we couldn't see the definition.
Just the depression.
You could see the depression, but with as much time as my dad spent in the woods, hiking and hunting and climbing, he didn't think it was a bear. Let me put you that way.
Your dad's a no nonsense guy, from what I can tell. What did he say? Did he say anything?
He said whatever left those prints was walking on 2 legs, not
So
4.
it's bipedal.
Yeah, he was his way of saying, "Hey, that wasn't a person."
He's not going to, right.
Yeah, I mean, my dad's not ever going to say that, even though, like I said, he spent 9 months at the South Pole, so he had some strange experiences there too.
Yeah, I'll bet. But you never had like any type of, nothing smacking the side of the cabin or any type of weird.
We didn't, but we've heard stories from some of the old timers that we used to hunt, because when we got older, we could go into the bar, obviously. Even when we were 18, we went in. But everybody during hunting season, it's not that way now, because the place we all used to go isn't there anymore. But all the old timers, everybody walked around there with their guns on, everybody's drinking, and these guys would tell stories. And like I said, my cousin lived up there for quite a few years, year round. And some of the old timers would tell stories about them throwing rocks at them in the woods.
No kidding.
Yeah, throwing rocks.
Did you ever have any of that? Any rocks or any?
Not that I'm aware of, no. No, and I know the difference when you're being stalked by a cougar, because I've been stalked a couple of times, so you know the difference between that. Let me put it this way. Even today when I go up there, I always have a gun. and that's not for people.
Well,
Not
no.
for people.
but I mean, if you're,
It is, but you know what I'm saying.
yeah, but the difference between, say,
even
here,
hiking.
without question, because up there are things that will eat you. You get stomped or eaten up there. It's not like walking around, even in some areas down here. Not everywhere, because there's certain areas in Texas that you really. I mean, if you're going to go out, I'm always strapped. But at the end of the day,
Strapped right now, man.
right. But if you're out in that area, you're an idiot. To be perfectly blunt, and I don't want to offend anybody's sensibilities here, but you don't go out in those type of woods without some protection. You just don't do it.
200 yards from the cabin where it gets into the deep woods,
Uh-huh.
and I can see the cabin. I still always carry a handgun.
So talk about the tell us about your conversation with the game warden and his experience.
So we've been hunting up there, like I said, for years. And in Washington at the time, they used to do game checks, and you always knew where it was going to be. And when we'd go home, we'd always leave at night, the last day of whatever we were going to hunt, and inevitably we'd go through the game check, and it's game warden working this game check, and we've been hunting up there with either my best friend's dad or just the two of us since we were little, 8 or 9. And so he'd been there this whole time. And we used to talk to him, and, he'd never really, we'd stop and he'd check the tags and do whatever. But we got to know him. Like sometimes we'd eat breakfast in town, and he'd be there eating breakfast because he lived up there. And one year he just wasn't there anymore. Well, I knew he wasn't ready for retirement. Shouldn't have been close to retirement. And when I was in law enforcement, I ran into him. We got some poachers poaching salmon in the creek by the house. And so we took him into custody, but we had to call Fish and Game. And he came out and was taking him into custody. And I'm not going to use his name because I'm sure he's retired now, but I asked him, I said, hey, man, you had a house up there. Your wife lived up there. She had a job up there. She worked for DOT on White Pass. What's the deal? I said, how you never leave us. You get divorced. You die. It's like, no, he was south of Mount St. Helens and had a direct run-in with Bigfoot. Straight up. Direct head-on run-in with him in the woods. And it chased him out of the woods and into his truck. And he said it pushed logs down off the clear cut on the deck down towards his truck trying to get him. Exactly, almost word for what he said. And I said, well, what happened? He said, I couldn't tell anybody that because he goes, they would have fired me. They would have thought I was a nut. Any number of reasons. He said, so when this fisheries position, because it was fish and game, the fisheries position opened up, I took it. He said, I could not go back in the woods there, and I couldn't tell him why I couldn't go back in the woods. I said, what did you do with your house? He goes, we sold it for a loss and got the hell out of there. He goes, I was so unnerved that I took all the vacation I had and was making excuses not to go back into the woods there.
This thing, did he say that it paced him? Did he have a real close encounter to where it intimidated him?
Face to face. The way he made it sound to me was like literally he said he ran into, and I think he meant ran into. He was going up there looking for because in Washington we can't put out feed solids. Right. Going and looking for some place where another hunter had reported feed.
So he was looking for bait stations.
Yeah, he was looking for bait stations basically. And he said he ran into it, and I think he literally ran into it. Enough that when he said it chased him, he said he was probably a quarter of a mile into the woods, so up this trail. And he said chased him all the way back to his truck. And he meant chased. They're carrying guns, right? They're carrying pistol and a rifle bullet.
Right. Yeah.
Or shotgun. I don't know.
Any game warden that I've encountered, honestly, they're pretty well strapped. They've got an AR platform and their pistol and shotgun at the very least.
A lot of them have a true long gun, rifle.
Yeah.
But yeah, and he said this thing. He said he felt that it was trying to kill him.
Really?
That's what he felt. And he said he unnerved him enough. I'm like, you're a seasoned game warden. You arrested, I don't know how many people, made drug arrests on labs up in the woods and all this other stuff. And it unnerved him enough that he couldn't go back in the woods.
So he was face to face, and he felt like this thing. I mean, this thing.
Instead, it was rolling logs and stuff. Once he got down off the deck and then to the road where his truck was, it was pushing logs down towards the truck.
Really?
Yep. And he had no radio comms where he was at here. No, because they did have cell phones, but they were the old bag style phones. But he said he get no communications. He said if something would have happened to him, they knew where he was going, but they would have found him.
Yeah, they would have found him later.
Yeah.
Days later, maybe.
Yeah. Well, they would have. If he hadn't checked back in by that night, they would have seen somebody up. But still, he felt like he was in danger, mortal danger.
I mean, it's amazing because a lot of this stuff that you said tonight, honestly, I haven't heard some of this.
He grew up there. He was from there.
Yeah.
Like,
Did he have a working knowledge or a familiarity with what everyone believes is up there?
Absolutely.
And this just
they talk about it.
this just hammered it.
It's like an open secret, right? Like everybody knows.
Well, I mean,
You
clearly.
don't get out of your truck without your gun. It's not because of people. It's because of things.
So
he actually got a transfer away from that area, correct?
Yeah, but he didn't tell him why he wanted to transfer. The opening came up, and he just took it. He said he didn't. He was ready to leave the game department and go to a police department, but he wanted to stay there. And when the opening came up, he said he goes, I didn't care where it was at, because you're vested in the state retirement, and you're
Oh yeah, and
not to give up.
but I mean, the game warden here in my county, actually we have two in our county because it's so big. One in the north end, one in the south end. But the one down here, I know him very well, and he'll never admit to me that these things exist. But what he will say, he'll give you that look with his face, like yes, they do, but he won't speak it with his mouth. But now he has come out and told me, he said, there's a few places in this county I will not go without backup. And that is either the county sheriff department has to come go with me or other game wardens. But a lot of times other game wardens are hour and a half away. And he said most of the time it'll be county deputies that go with me. And then he finished it off one time. He said, and this ain't always after people. And I looked at him and he looked at me and he wasn't nothing else said. So I think a lot of them see more than they talk about.
Absolutely.
Just like regular law enforcement, I believe there's a lot of guys that see a lot of stuff. I mean, I've known some deputies that have seen these things. They'll talk to you in private about it.
Yeah.
But the other group, they wouldn't dare come on and do a YouTube show. I mean, some of them they would just no, but just one-on-one with them, they'll come out and tell you stuff, and talk about getting calls to people's houses because of a prowler, and they get there and they say it ain't a prowler, it's something else because they get a glimpse of it or something. And, and like him, transferring to another area, that just tells you that. This bothered him. It caused him so much anxiety. He was ready to get away from her.
I believe I know he'd looked at going to state patrol at that point, or going to another agency, but he loved the woods so much he just did not want to go back in the woods there. At that point there was only 12 game wardens for the whole state.
Right.
And that was fish and game. Now I don't know. I mean, there are, but like hell, where we're at here in Texas, there's almost 500 now game wardens.
Right. Texas is a big old state.
Yeah.
Very, very huge. Carries a lot of land mass. During your time as rescue and search, and or search and rescue. I said that backwards. And law enforcement. Did you ever have any? I know the game warden brought that up, but did you ever hear anybody else say, "Hey, I've seen a Bigfoot"?
Yes. When I was on when we worked the Indian reservation, we worked contract the reservation. The tribal members would talk about it all the time. Without hesitation, they weren't shy about it. They would talk about seeing it on the res all the time. They talked about it, but they weren't. Some of them were deathly afraid, and some of them treated it more like an elder, if that makes sense. Some of them had respect, but some of them were just deathly afraid. You could tell that they'd had some kind of incident, but some of them treated it. They looked at it like it was part of the tribe. I don't know how to explain it. Like it was like a god, or those are some of the older tribal members. Maybe it was just respect, but they didn't seem afraid, if that makes sense. But it was very talked about. I know some deputies that had run-ins with it up towards Mount Rainier. That one of them was called out because they said they had been seen crossing the road back and forth multiple times. And they thought it was somebody being a jackass in like a monkey suit. People being pranksters. And it turned out that it wasn't. His exact words were, "It wasn't a person in a monkey suit, and I don't know what the hell it was." Those are his exact words. I'm like, "Well, how'd you write that up?" He said, "Well, I just put in my report that I didn't find anything." I'm like, "Okay." I mean, he clearly saw it. He's like, "Yep, there was something there, but it wasn't a person in a monkey suit." I'm like, "Okay." Which, I mean, here in Texas, I don't know if I told you, like, I live in Tyler. I saw a monkey in a tree, and I thought, "Oh, I'm going crazy." So I called my friend over, and he said, "No, it's a monkey." But apparently in Louisiana, there was a lab, medical lab, and when the lab closed down, they just opened the cages and turned it loose.
Wow.
Turned them all loose.
Tyler's not very far from Louisiana, by the way. It's
No.
within about an hour and 20 minutes or so.
So
Yeah, that happened in Florida too when they had, what was the name of that place, Pat, where all the monkeys got loose?
Oh, Silver Springs.
Silver Springs.
hell, it might be the same company. Hell, who knows?
Yeah, Silver Springs was like an amusement park.
Ah, gotcha.
They filmed all them old Tarzan movies back in
Yeah.
the 1930s there, and a bunch of them monkeys the rhesus monkeys got loose.
Right.
And they've been breeding for, almost 100 years now out there in the wild. And they're everywhere out there through the trees.
Right.
But they're small monkeys. There's no way anybody could mistake those for a Bigfoot.
This was a big monkey I saw. I literally thought I was going crazy.
Right.
He's like, "Nope. And it wasn't afraid of people at all.
Right.
It would come and eat I'd bird feeders out. It would come and clean the bird feeders out. It was there forever. I'm like, what am I going to do? Call the game department, the animal control, and tell them I got a monkey in my backyard? Yes, but
Yeah.
I knew all the deputies and the local cops and all the prosecutors. I was friends with all those guys. As a matter of fact, one time I was doing a little project and sort of accidentally cut my house on fire, and all the fire department guys came out, and I never heard the end of it. Hell, I ran into one of them today, and he's like, "Catch anything on fire lately?" Yeah, I mean, of course, they made a big production out of it. I'm like, "Dude, it was one spark." He's like, "Well, we're going to check." They came out with the FLIR. They went up in the attic, and they did all the other crap. "Oh, we better open up the wall." I'm like, "Ah." So, yeah.
Is I know a few years ago, not far from here in the city of Pell City, uh, and it made the local news, all the Alabama news channels, and I think it made a few others. But a guy had a big cobra. They said this whole cobra was about 15 foot long. It was a big one.
Wow.
Got loose,
Wow.
and
It's a whole lot of notes.
they had the state out there, and I think they had some of the zookeepers from Birmingham come in, and they couldn't ever find that cobra. He just disappeared, but they said he probably wouldn't survive our winters. But they searched all over. I think they even brought a dog in that was specialized in looking for snakes or something. I think it come from somewhere else, but and they couldn't ever find that old big cobra. It just disappeared off, But could you imagine just walking up on something like that and be like, Lord have mercy, I mean, which now, Florida, they're having the problems with all the pythons, and they're steadily coming north.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, it's I can imagine you walking out there and, hey, there's a monkey, and that really, catch you off guard.
I literally thought I was going crazy. I'm like, I'm seeing stuff.
Right.
I'm like, literally, I got to get somebody else over here to look at it.
There was a question back a little while ago. I meant to let you answer that. You've had some, what you, in your opinion, was Sasquatch activity, but have you ever seen one exactly or get a glimpse or something?
I saw a shadow in the woods one time. When I was hiking with my dad close to the cabin, we were looking because we thought we both felt uneasy, and we thought it was a cougar stalking us. It was that kind of uneasy feeling, and we were kind of looking around. And I saw a shadow in the woods, but as far as directly seeing it, no, not as a direct, like, hey, I'm face to face with you, but as a, hey, I saw something that I think that it was. One of my friends back home, I'm pretty sure, had a pretty close encounter. He was renting a cabin, and he said he came out of the cabin and there was something standing there. And I said, "Oh, what was it?" He goes, "Something." And I said, "Person? Bear?" No, he goes, "No, something." I'm like, "Oh." He said, something big and hairy. I'm like, "Okay." I said, how much did you had to drink? Goes, "I hadn't had anything to drink. We just got there." She's like, "I was going outside to go to the bathroom because the girls were in the bathroom." I'm like, "Okay." And had it been any of my other friends, I probably would have just been like, "Oh, he's trying to be funny," but he was pretty serious about it. And he's really one of the few people that I know that has ever talked about it. A lot of people have heard sounds. A lot of people I know have heard thumping and noises and have felt that it was there. You got guys that I know, mountain climber guys, that have seen footprints that know that's what it is, right? Like, hey, this wasn't a human. They could, they're outdoorsmen. They know what it looks like. And before Mount St. Helens erupted, guys that would climb the mountain there would see it a lot. After the eruption, not so much, but then I've heard stories from some of the National Guardsmen that responded there that said they found Sasquatch corpses.
From the eruption?
Yeah, from the eruption or from the outflow from the water.
You know, I never asked you about that.
Yeah.
That's interesting. You brought that up.
that they recovered corpses that weren't human. But again, I don't know. I didn't see it. These guys are pretty trustworthy people, and I think had they have not been retired, that they probably wouldn't have ever said anything. He said that they were told not to say anything, but I heard it from several different people that were there for that. And there's a lot of, I mean, again, anybody that's spent enough time in the woods up there or lives up there in that area, that lives out in that kind of terrain, almost had some kind of experience. Now, whether they'll talk about it or not directly and not talk around it, something else. You know? We have people that have a cabin not far from ours that I thought somebody broke into their cabin. He said something, and then I assumed it was a bear, and he said no, but I don't know. Broke in the cabin, and it looks like it stayed there for several days, but didn't eat any of the food. He said it looks like they just slept there. Didn't break anything up, and I know most people when they break into cabins aren't usually the nicest. And
Right.
I still think it was probably somebody, but he thinks it was something else. I mean, and it's possible. There's certainly enough odd things that happen. Again, we were talking about earlier when I was in law enforcement. If you want to see pure evil, be a cop, because you're gonna see people that are truly evil, that are truly not people anymore. You know, their soul is gone. They're, I don't know, possessed, whatever you want to call them, but people that do evil, people that murder little children, things like that. Those people are pure evil.
Yes, they are.
And there's no redemption in them, because usually when it happens, they don't care that they've done it. And I don't think a normal person that didn't have, I'm not going to blame it on mental illness, because, well, some of it's mental illness. I believe that some of it's just pure evil. You get to see people that are, you can see people on their worst days that don't do things like that. I mean, people that had terrible, worst, bad thing would never do that. And then there are people that enjoy doing things like that. That, to me, I mean, I've seen some, I guess I'm not overly religious, but I think I've encountered, I know I've encountered pure evil, but I also know that in my day-to-day life as a police officer, that there were people that, again, I think weren't people anymore. I feel like that their mortal soul was gone or suppressed or something. And I don't know why it seems to be so prevalent up there. In Washington is the home of the serial killer. They produce more serial killers than anywhere else in the United States. You know, people blame it on, winter dysphoria, where it rains and drizzles and it's dark and all kinds of crap. But I think that at some points, I think there's places in Washington that you're closer to the veil, and I think things cross the line. There's a lot of devil worshippers up there, and I think it's becoming more prevalent. I mean, when I grew up there, it was very much like Texas. The people had faith, and they believed in each other and they took care of each other, and you know, they were pro Second Amendment, and they, you know, it was farmers. But now there's so many people up there that have migrated there from a state that's south of them. I want to call those people out, but it's not Oregon. That have influenced the population up there right now. That it's not the same place I grew up. I always thought I'd move back there. I have no intention of ever moving back there. I want to go visit, see my family, and go to the cabin and do those things, but I have no intention of ever moving back now.
Well, oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh no, I just, you know, and evil's everywhere, and then things are changing everywhere. But I believe that there are a lot of people up there that are more open to not caring as much and not having the ability to make good decisions. I don't know how else to put it. I've got words I'd like to use, but just say that they are more susceptible.
In a lot of parts of the country now.
Yeah. No, yeah.
Well, you moved to Texas,
Mm-hmm.
and how long have you been in Texas?
It's 19 years. It'll be 19 years in second week in August. It'll be 19 years.
And you've done some law enforcement in Texas too, correct?
I've helped. I didn't do regular law enforcement here. I did some volunteer work. I helped out with some investigations and stuff. DA's office.
Oh, okay.
Primarily since I've been here, I was a firearms manager with Gander Mountain and was an ATF coordinator there. And then I did law enforcement sales. A friend of mine owned a gun store, and I ran the law enforcement sales division for him. And then after that, I worked for Suddenlink as a manager, and then decided that I was done and wanted to retire. So I just said I'm done.
Well, I know you said something about your neighborhood where you're living, having some paranormal going on.
We have a lot of high strangeness here. We have in our neighborhood. There's so much high strangeness here. We have a paranormal group Facebook page for our neighborhood.
It started when Will moved in.
I have never heard of that before. Now that's why.
Yeah.
It started when Will moved in.
We have a regular Facebook page, you know, for the
They started
neighborhood.
with
Yeah.
And then we have a for sale page, and then we have a paranormal page. And
wow.
it's very, very interesting. One thing I will say is that when they went to expand past our house, they found a huge chalk deposit down here. They must have filled and pumped for 45 days trying to get all the chalk out of the ground. And those chalk deposits were the native tribes considered them very sacred. And I think that they may have stirred something up on top of it. I've heard that they found some artifacts there, but didn't really do what they should have done. I also know that right next to the house here, when they were putting the foundation in, they probably uncovered at least a half a dozen skeletons of horses and cows. And I'm guessing this was all farmland, so I'm guessing that was the dump site for all the dead animal stuff. They've been covered up, and they've been in the ground for a long time. Enough, but though we had trouble keeping work crews in the houses they were building it because they got the rumor went around and it was haunted. And like one day I looked out and the guys were putting up bricks and they'd left the concrete machine running and the bricks and mortar setting on a plate, you know, like on the thing, and just were gone.
Wow.
I haven't had any negative experiences in the house. caught some weird stuff on the camera once, but I don't know. But we had somebody in the neighborhood that definitely caught something on the camera. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. I was trying to find it to show Dave, and I can't find it. I don't know if they pulled it down. No ifs, ands, or buts about it that they caught. But
Wow.
they see entities in the houses a lot out here. And there's the oldest house out here is maybe 8 or 9 years old. Right? Like,
So y'all fairly new subdivision.
yeah. Oh, yeah. Our houses, we built our house. Literally, we moved in the week we locked down for COVID. We moved in. We didn't even know if we were going to have movers. So I had Ron just in case as a backup. He didn't do very good, but
Thank you.
So do you believe it's buried? Do you believe they built it maybe on part of a burial ground?
kind of thinking that, especially with the chalk deposit being over there. And from what I understand, the chalk deposit was open to the earth. They didn't discover it. It was open. And several people in the area have said that there was a village or some kind of temporary settlement here at one point, and that they were pushed out when they start, way back in the 1800s when they were pushing everybody around.
First Nations.
Yeah, First Nations. Yeah. Were pushed out of here, which seems to make sense.
Go check it out, Pat. We just had a big tree snap out here behind my house. Ain't no wind, ain't nothing going on, but something just took place out there.
Tell them not to forget to take a pistol.
So they send me out there with no pistol.
That's it.
So I got a
That was
question.
crazy just then.
Should have been on the camera.
It sounded like a pistol went off out there, but it was a limb or something broke.
That's always an unsettling feeling, isn't it?
Yeah, tell me it is. Well, this stuff happens here all the time. So sometimes it's subtle. That wasn't subtle right
That
there.
was not subtle.
That was sounded deliberate right there.
They're coming to check you out.
Yeah.
Could be
When
very.
I hear it, it's not subtle.
Yeah, when she hears it, it's I'm surprised nobody heard that on the this thing because I mean that was loud. And
Looks like
go
you
ahead.
got. Looks like you got some firewood though. You gotta go cut it up for firewood.
Yeah.
To your knowledge, in your area, are there quartz mines or quartz deposits?
You talking about in Washington?
Yeah, in Washington. Crystal or anything of the sort?
Not that I'm aware of. That doesn't mean there's not, but there's no mining in that area. Not of any kind. The paying for gold once in a while in the creek, but there's no gold mines.
But there's a lot of, that's a mineral rich area.
Oh, yeah.
For sure. So one other question. This is something Mark and I had talked about. Okay. So you know what the woods were like in the atmosphere, we'll say the climate in the woods was when you were kids.
Mhm.
And you've been out since then, right? Do you feel like that has the atmosphere or the feeling, the sense you get out in the woods now, do you feel like that's changed at all?
Yes. Worried about so much about when I'm at the cabin, like I am here. I carry a pistol all the time.
Yeah.
But the only time we don't is when we go down to the river. I take it off because we're playing in the water. It's there. I think that there is Bigfoot, whatever you want to call it. Whatever your name is for it. I believe is
More prolific, you think?
yeah. I think they're expanding, and I told we talked about this the other day.
Yeah.
I think that they were bred by whoever, humans with intervention from somebody else, however you want to call it. Again, I think they were, as we talked about, I believe they were bred as a warrior class because
Which is interesting.
the
'Cause I've
things
never
that
heard
humans
anybody say that.
things that humans want, they don't want to have to fight for themselves, and they don't want to do manual labor. So inevitably, these classes get subjugated at some point, however it happens, racial, whatever. But inevitably, they rebel, and I feel like they may have been a tribe. This is my own theory, not based on any logical sense. This is my own thinking. That they were bred as a race of warriors, and whoever bred them lost control. And there were still so many humans that they couldn't overcome all the humans, so they decided to leave the area. But that they're steadily growing. I believe they're in a clan type environment.
Mhm.
I also believe the reason we don't find remains is because I think they bury their dead. But I also think there's some, like we said, some kind of mystical ability about them, right? Like they're a hybrid.
Yeah.
They're part human and part something else. I don't know. People talk about their ability to manipulate space time, open portals, things like that. I'm not going to say that that's not true. I'm not even going to say it's not probable. Because if they are hybrids, they may have that ability. I don't know. A lot of people have said Nephilim. I don't know about that. Possible. A lot of people have said that they're demons. Possible. But again, my feeling is they were bred as a warrior race and were not able to be controlled. And like a lot of people, they rebelled. But instead of going to war, they were smart enough to know that they were outnumbered and choose to flee the area.
Well, I think it's an interesting hypothesis.
And again, that they live in I do not believe they're solitary either. I believe they live in family units or groups, tribes type. The Native Americans speak of it that way. They aren't singles, right? It's when they talk about it, they talk about them as groups, right? Especially a lot of the elders, recognize them as a group or a family, or they aren't reporting them a sighting of or interacting with one.
Mm-hmm.
Right there, it's a group. It's I think they're highly intelligent. The other reason I think that they are bred as a warrior race is that when they do things, when they take direct action, clearly they're smart enough. They could use a firearm if they wanted to, I would believe, right? But it always seems to be rocks or sticks and things like that, crude weapons. Right?
I don't think they have need of weapons. I mean, you and I've had a discussion.
I don't either. But I'm saying when they do things, if they ever do anything like that, it's always the rock or the stick or the.
Yeah.
So they have the ability. That I also believe they have the ability to make fire and control fire. That's
possibly. I mean, our belief system on these. There's some alignment. I've discussed this. Mark and I've discussed this ad nauseum. I'm not going to get into it. There's certain things. I think the warrior component or the warrior classification is valid for different reasons. I don't think it's by any stretch. I think they have to do with the Therian that's mentioned in Revelation. Not going to get into that tonight. I don't think it's germane, but I'm glad you kind of spoke to that because I haven't heard anybody really characterize these things as being bred as warriors, which I absolutely believe they are. But for different purposes.
It just makes sense to me looking at, I study history. That's my deal, right? And I look around at what's happened when this has been attempted before. We know, way before the Germans ever tried to manipulate the genome to create super warriors. It happened in the past.
Well, I mean, that was the genesis of Superman, the Ubermensch. So,
I mean, we know what's happened in the past. We know they have the ability to manipulate genes now through CRISPR technology. They could breed in and out a lot of things. So I don't think that I don't think we're alone in the universe either. So there's that. I think no matter what your standpoint is, if you believe in God or whatever your God is, it'd be pretty ignorant and arrogant for us to think that you're the only species he would create.
Well, we'll have another conversation, but at the end of the day, man,
we need to.
In
We
his
may have to
image.
do a round 2 on this, and
Yeah.
No, I agree with that.
Because it'll get
You
it
don't.
would get fairly involved, but
I don't disagree with that. We were the only ones made in his likeness. But again, that doesn't mean he didn't create other, and intentionally with intent. He created us, and he created the animals, and he
No
did
question.
this, he did all these other things. But I think he created other races for us at some point to interact with. That's just my thinking, right? Like, I just think it's just arrogant for us to think we're the only thing he could have created, right? Like, he's all powerful and all knowing and all, whatever you believe. I mean, whatever your religious belief is, right? Like, some people might not believe that. That's okay. I'm not here to force my religion on anybody. But I think if you do believe in a creator, or even if you believe we came from frogs, we're the only people that came from frogs, because there are certainly other planets out there that can sustain life. Like, I don't think I came from a frog. I don't think I evolved from a monkey or
right. Well, like I said, I mean, like Mark said, we could go round 2 on that at some
I
point,
might be around 3 or 4 for that one.
possibly.
That everybody has their different theories what these things are, and that's the good thing. I've got friends that's in this chat that believe totally different than I do, but we're friends. And at the end of the day, we can still have a discussion, and at the end of the day, still be friends when we get done with it.
Exactly.
Because none of it is wrote down in stone exactly about everything. I mean, some of this is theories, and we're there's a lot of different theories out there, and I got a sneaky feeling we're all kind of right in a certain amount of way. I think we all have pieces of the puzzle. But putting that puzzle together, that's where it comes in at. And but yeah, I agree. There's different theories, and I mean, I kind of go with David in my theory, and some of the rest of us do. But other people have other theories, and that's fine. I mean, none of us are experts, and so I'm glad to hear somebody else have something different to say, because that makes you think about things, kind of what went on in the past. So I know we've been on now right at 2.5 hours. I don't want to wear you out. You want to talk some more, or you?
I'm okay to talk some more. I mean, is there any questions out there? Does anybody have questions they want to ask?
I know there were some way on back.
You answered a bunch.
One of them, Miss CD asked, do you think that a lot of the disappearances were Bigfoot or alien related?
Short answer is yes.
Okay.
I do. I think that they were, again, outside influenced, whether aliens or Bigfoot or, people have talked about there being portals that open and close. Is that what happened to some of these people? Maybe. But I can't explain it. And so that always takes me to that paranormal side of it. Like, if it was 1 or 2 people, again, that'd be one thing. There are so many. I mean, just the numbers are staggering.
And you can't explain them.
No, you can't explain them. You can never come to a logical outcome of how these people disappeared. You just can't. I can work this 6 ways from Sunday. I've worked a lot of investigations. I've done a lot of things. Logically, there's no way that these people disappear and leave no trace.
Yeah.
I don't care. Things don't disappear in the woods. You go out there, especially 20, 30 years ago when the backpack frames were all aluminum.
Right.
You're carrying a big backpack.
Right, and that's
You've
not
got your sleeping
biodegradable.
bag that doesn't go away. You've
Fine.
got your boots.
Right.
You've got maybe the leather rots away, but soles and rubber aren't going to go away. You've got your stoves. You've got all this stuff. How about your firearms?
And all that stuff just
How
disappeared.
about the fact that they found that Winchester lever rack, or I guess it was a Henry,
grown into a tree?
Yeah, no, they found one that had been leaning up against a tree since the 1800s.
Yeah, but it grown into it, I think.
No, it was still good. They took it, cleaned it up, and were able to fire it.
Amazing.
But it had been sitting there that long. It didn't go away. Right? Like, there's going to be some trace. Wedding rings aren't going to go away. Jewelry's not going to go away. Glasses aren't going to go away. But for nothing to ever be found. And again, sometimes they do find down the road, they find things.
So this goes back into the I guess the areas that you, or the things that you and I have discussed, Mark, about abductions and Bigfoot, because Bigfoot essentially is a gateway drug. I think the fellows over at Blurry Creatures got it right. I don't listen to them, but I heard them say this, and they're right. Bigfoot's the gateway drug. Prospecting had asked if I had anything. I'll talk about that in just briefly in a second. But the bigger issue in my mind is the alien disclosure and the impact, because it all comes down to a seed war. And I'm not going to get into any of that. That's another time for another discussion and another show. But whether it's Bigfoot, whether it is aliens, what you see is a fascination with propagation. And I think these things, the sightings have risen because they are propagating. And when you study these alien abductions to any extent, it all comes down to the to studying or actually extracting the seed and the egg and then propagating a species. And it started out in one direction and it's become more sophisticated as time has gone on. And there are biblical reasons, because I'm always going to approach this from a biblical perspective. And Prospecting said, does Dave have anything? Really, I don't. Anything that I have, that I've encountered or dealt with, has been straight up demonic manifestations and everything. And that's not the goal or the climate of the discussion for this particular podcast. We can talk about that some other time. But I mean, Will and I, and even Ron here, I think, we're pretty much on the same page where this is. For the most part, there are some differences. I was glad to hear him talk about these things being bred as warriors, because I absolutely believe that, but for different reasons. I think that's an interesting hypothesis or position, because I hadn't heard anybody really characterize it that way.
Right. A lot of people have characterized the dog men as warriors, but I've never heard them really mention the Bigfoot as being a type of a warrior. I mean, you hear the dog man. Of course, the dog man thing is a big thing right now, which I do believe it is. There's no doubt. I think these things are there, and I've seen some pictures from people, and even some of my own pictures of something with pointed ears. So I do believe these things exist. And yeah, I agree with you on that, David. That's
well, I mean, Mark, it's pretty simple in a lot of ways. This is a fairly, I don't want to say academic, but it is fairly logical progression. If you go back to the Genesis 6 incursion with the human, the B'nai Elohim, and the cohabitation with the daughters of men, and then the perversion of creation, including the animal kingdom, and then you I don't want to say meld, but you combine that with the Greek and Roman and Egyptian mythologies and mythological gods, which are not mythology at all. It's absolute. Those are absolute facts. It's a fairly logical progression that you see all of these different goat men, frog men, dog men, Sasquatch, Minotaurs, so on and so forth. It's a very logical progression if you approach it from that perspective. It checks all the boxes. And the only thing that I would say is if I apply biblical standard to these things and the characteristics that they manifest, honestly, you're only going to come up with one conclusion if I apply the biblical standard. If anybody does that, not just me. It's fairly academic, honestly. And I don't want to offend, because that's not my point. That's never been my perspective. But frankly, because I've been honest the entire time, if the information is out there, if you want to know, you will find out. The perspective that we really don't know what these things are doesn't hold much weight or water at this juncture, and I'll tell you why. I mean, we're in the information age. There's an information war going on every single day. If you want to know about these things, there's enough anecdotal evidence and historical evidence to support what they are. I mean, is it Melba Ketchum that did the gene study, the genome study?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. She kind of nails it down. She filtered it down to the essence, the source and origin, and you can come up with this. I mean, if you want to, or not, it's all a matter of preference. But like I say, that's a
Island of Dr. Moreau here.
that's another discussion for another.
Right. Yeah. But there's no telling. I wondered a lot of times there's a lot of truth to that right there too.
Yeah, quite a bit.
You know, I think that the other reason sightings are on the rise is I think that we are encroaching on territory, just like with the rabbit just a minute ago. We're in their territory, so we're seeing more. The other thing I think is that, you know, we talked about
their habitations.
Yeah, we're taking their habitat away. We're
Last
also,
I checked, they weren't paying taxes to upkeep any of this,
No.
but that's my perspective on it.
the other thing is too is that people are. Remember we talked about being able to pierce the veil in people's perception.
Yeah,
The other day,
and
I
you said
think-
what did talk about? Say what you thought about that, about the openness of perception.
I think people that are willing, people that do not block their perception filters off, people that are willing to see those things are more likely to see them, because I believe everybody has a perception filter. If you're walking in the woods and I can attest to this firsthand, you're walking in the woods, there's 3 of us walking in the woods, 2 of us see a deer, one of the people don't see a deer. Why is that? Because his perception filter was blocked. We all can see it. It's all 10 feet in front of us, standing in the same spot. The person can't see it. I won't say he, she, whatever, can't see it because they aren't open to seeing it to some degree. I believe that we all have a perception filter, and people that will let themselves, experience new things, leave themselves open to new experiences, are uninhibited by what people think they should see, are not afraid to say what they've seen, are more likely to see and experience things. Your brain's hardwired to not see bad or strange things. It is.
Right.
We can prove it, right? Like you can prove that your brain's hardwired not to do or see those things. But if you give yourself the opportunity to let yourself see those things, you're going to see them. I mean, you know, they talk about the Native Americans when they would do peyote or Jimson weed or some of these other things,
Devil's lettuce.
they'd have this altered state. And people would say, oh, they're not seeing reality. Are they not? Or are they seeing what's actually there? When they could cross that veil and see, when they could see the other side, and, you know, people are like, oh, it was the drugs. They're like, really? Was it? Or was their perception opened up enough for them to see that? And I don't think you have to do drugs to do that. I think if you just open yourself up to the experience and not be afraid and realize that all the possibilities are out there, if you just let yourself see it, I think you're going to see more. I just do. I feel like
I think that's pretty.
if you don't believe in ghosts, you're probably never going to see a ghost unless it's a very extreme condition. You don't believe in Bigfoot, unless he's in your face, you're probably going to miss him if he's standing 10 feet away. But like I said, with the deer, the same thing, and I've experienced that. The kid I was telling you about when we went hunting and got turned around and he got scared,
Yeah.
we literally, the 3 of us walked down a trail. Unfortunately, it was elk season because it was a nice buck. He was 10 feet away from us.
Buck or a bull?
No, it was elk season. This was a buck. It was a deer. It wasn't. We were in elk season.
Okay.
and he was a good-sized buck. The three of us were standing abreast in this spot, looking around. This was before the weather ever went bad. Todd and I could see it, and the other kid couldn't see it. Looking in the same direction, just wasn't geared to let his mind open up to think he could see
Right.
it.
Well, I mean, a good case in point is just this assassination attempt. Okay, initially they were saying, well, we're not classifying it as assassination attempt. Well, for Pete's sake, you saw it on live TV, heard the gunshots, this man's ear is bleeding. What the hell else was it? You know, I mean, it certainly wasn't, you know, a mosquito bite. So, I mean, it's things of that, I mean, like that. But at the end of the day, prospecting to ask where the old cryptids went, again, you can look in the Bible. The bulls of Bashan, okay, the lion-headed men of Judah were killed by David and his mighty men of old. It's all in there. And if you look at even the apocryphal books, you're going to find the information that you need. But like I say, that's another discussion for another time. I think I wanted Will. I appreciate you having us on because I wanted Will to speak to some of these things, and he had some pretty interesting.
Had a great night.
Pretty interesting positions on it, which I didn't even hear, dude. Some of these I've never heard before. Okay.
Just kind of scratched the surface, man.
Right. Never heard. And then he torpedoed me the day before yesterday because I was going to ask him on live, and he just cratered that effort. He said, "Dave, what do you think these things are?" And I was like, "You dog." I was going to ask you on live TV, on live podcast, what I thought, and then that ended up in another about an hour discussion. So,
well, I appreciate y'all being on, and
had a great time.
I know we just scratched the surface. I mean, I know there's probably tons and tons more of stuff that you've encountered, and later on I'll have you back on again.
Absolutely.
You know, and we'll talk some more about it. I know we've been on now going on 3 hours, so it's I know I know we could go hours. I mean, I could keep popping questions, and we could keep this going. And but I know it's getting about 10 o'clock, and Pat, he's still awake over here. But
little bit.
I'm just kidding.
What did he find?
Huh?
What did he find?
You didn't see nothing.
Nah, there's some branches on the ground under that tree, but
That work right up here. Back there?
yeah, I went to the one by the front. That's what it sounded like to me. It was that way.
Oh, did it? Okay, I couldn't tell when it sounded like to me it was right back there, but I couldn't tell. So you never. It's hard to say.
Hey, I want to comment. Somebody commented, Joyce. I think you're 100% right.
100% correct. I saw that too. Right on the money.
Yeah, I think there's a lot going on. Yeah, and
we've been lied to, man. Lied to repeatedly.
And we witnessed something today.
Back on the screen again.
Yeah.
I think that, this is something that I didn't think we'd see. Not like this. I did not think they'd try to take out a former president who's running for president again.
They hate this guy. But I mean, at the end of the day, like I said, that the perception is reality. Well, we're not calling this an assassination attempt.
Oh, they are now.
Yeah, well, now they are, but initially they weren't. They see the man's ear is bleeding. It wasn't a mosquito bite. I mean, they heard the gunshots. It's ridiculous.
Okay, we've got the TV on in the background. We're sitting outside, but we've got TV on. Look how disheveled he looks, and then look at him. He's like, hell yeah!
Now we're watching this while we're talking, man.
Well, let me do a short prayer, and we'll get off here. Let y'all relax and everything. Like I said, I know it's getting about 10 o'clock at night, and
late, really?
I know.
Yeah,
it's 9:49.
Yeah, well, it's been a good night. So I've really enjoyed you sharing your experiences, you and David. David, you make a good co-host on the show, man.
You and Rooster?
Yeah, you know,
off camera just a second. All right, we're going to be off camera just for a couple seconds.
Better than Chaz.
Stop it.
You You'd make a good co-host. There ain't no doubt about it. So,
Well, thank you.
anything you want to add, babe? Pat?
It's a good show, guys.
Anything y'all would like to say before we do a prayer?
No, just thank you for your time.
Thanks for having us on.
Thanks for having us.
I really enjoyed it, and I really appreciate you coming on. And I know a lot of people have been in law enforcement. They still, even after they retired, a lot of them don't want to talk about it. And I know where they're coming from, but there were some people mentioning the chat that needed prayer. Of course, we need to pray for our country today, especially
Yes,
what
sir.
went on today. Pray for the people that were killed, innocent people that were killed. Also need to pray for the assassin. But
Let me remind y'all, be careful in the comments.
yeah, be very careful in the comments, especially with all this going on now. They're going to probably be tearing up some YouTube people.
Yep. That's why I say it.
It's sad that we can't have a public platform and talk but we know how the powers that be act or are. So
Yeah, I wanted to say big love. I'm gonna use Greg House's term, big love to everybody in chat. I didn't get to get in it tonight, but I was watching. Miss Sherry, like I said, you call me, I'll answer. We'll go from there. God bless you all.
yeah, we need. Greg was in here earlier. I don't know if Greg is still in here. And
He was.
yeah, I've seen him
Spencer
earlier.
had the crew in. The crew was in tonight.
Crew was there.
And we still got on
Several-
32 still
several
in chat.
hung in
We
there.
got up in almost to 50 at one time, then it dropped back down. So, but I know a lot of people are probably keeping up with
Yeah.
with the what's went on today and all that stuff too. So
No, love our family, our Cedar Creek farmstead family, and Woodwalk, Sawdust,
Woodwalk, watching holler. Oh yeah, all our friends that have
Martin.
Facebook pages and all that stuff. So.
That's right.
Well, let me say a little prayer and we'll when we sign off, y'all just stay in the background a minute,
Yeah,
Or-
you bet.
or we'll let her put you in backstage for a minute, or
Just stay where they are. I'll just, end
just
the
stay with
stream.
her. We're just in the live stream, and I'll let y'all go where y'all can start smoking them cigars again and drinking your iced tea.
That's what it was, man. It was iced tea.
So
Iced tea in a highball glass.
yeah, I hear you.
Cherry.
Let me
I
say a
reached
little prayer.
my limit though, man. I just wanted a little taste.
I don't blame you. I don't blame you.
Can always stay. Drink too much.
Do what now?
I said he can always stay.
Stop.
Like you haven't seen before.
Well, I really appreciate you, coming on and doing it on a Saturday night. But I wanted you to have time to talk about it, not be in a rush, not be tired. I know a lot of folks are tired on Fridays, but next week we're gonna have another guest on Friday night with us. Hopefully, if everything goes good, he'll be on Friday night with us, and we're going to talk some about farming, hopefully, and what's going on with the farmers.
Yeah.
Maybe he can give us some insight on that, and
Yep.
also what he's got going on in his state. So, but we'll go ahead and do a short prayer, and we'll get off here. Lord, thank you for everything you do. Thank you for the folks that came in chat tonight, sit here and listen to what Hammer and Dave had to say. Thank you, Lord, for being with us today. Lord, please be with our country and what's happened today. Be with the folks that's sick that has been mentioned in this chat and the chat last night and on the live that's having all kind of health issues, Lord. Be with them, please, Lord, and thy will be done. Lord, thank you for your son and what he's done for us and the Holy Spirit. Be with everybody the rest of this weekend and All we ask is in Jesus' name. Amen.
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 All right, we love y'all, everybody, and y'all have a good rest of the weekend and be praying. Be praying. We see things at work. Every day we turn around, there's something new popping up. I mean, just left and right, And y'all, hopefully there'll be a video released sometime this week. And next Friday night at 7, we'll have a live again, and we'll have another guest on. So y'all be sure to come and tune in. And remember, this field, David can agree with me, brings out some bad stuff in folks.
Bad stuff.
And y'all remember about that. It just, I don't know, man. Stuff just, me and Pat's been involved in, and some of it with some people who we thought were very good friends just flipped out or whatever they did. So y'all remember that. So, all right, everybody, we love y'all. Pray for each other, treat each other good, forgive each other. And we'll see y'all later.
Night, y'all.